Chapter 2026. Behind the ghost shadow demon monarch and the ancient blood demon monarch stood 12 tribulation passing experts. These people were the generals of Black Sun City and the powerhouses of the surrounding tribes. Ji Tianqing glanced over and saw that Elder Wuxia was among the crowd. His pupils shrank, and a glint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. The Moonless Tribe's elder really fled to Black Sun City to report. It seems that this group of demons must be the powerhouses of Black Sun City, he said in a low voice. Luo Li nodded in agreement and said coldly, the surrounding dozens of tribes are under the jurisdiction of Black Sun City. Black Sun City is very close to here. After receiving Elder Moonless' report, they will be able to mobilize a large number of powerhouses to hunt us down in the shortest time possible. Yun Yao was a little worried and said in a low voice, it was already very difficult for us to fight hundreds of demonic beasts, and we consumed a lot of our magic power. Now, the dozen or so tribulation stage powerhouses of Black Sun City have brought more than 400 primordial soul stage powerhouses. No matter how strong we are outnumbered and can't defeat so many powerhouses. What's more, the other side has the geographical advantage and set up an ambush in advance. Luo Li coldly snorted and said with disdain, back in the Moonless Tribe, we killed 100,000 demon clansmen. What are these mere 400 demon clansmen? As a martial saint, I can block 1,000,000 troops with one sword. What is there to fear? You don't have to worry, I will protect you well. These words were not arrogant, but the confidence of a martial saint powerhouse. Blocking 1,000,000 troops with one sword was not Luo Li boasting, but a fair evaluation of a martial saint powerhouse in the martial world. Of course, the so-called 1,000,000 soldiers were only elite soldiers. They were definitely not transcendent martial artists above the spirit refinement realm. At this moment, Dark Blood Demon King, who was the leader, opened his mouth. He looked at Ji Tianqing proudly and said in a majestic tone, Ji Tianqing, I heard that you are the #1 genius of the human race, and also the mortal enemy of our race. You have all kinds of divine abilities. But today, I see that you are just as so. You have fallen into my hands. You wouldn't have thought of that, would you? This sovereign has grasped an ancient fiend Tao divine ability. Even from tens of thousands of miles away, I can still search for your whereabouts. Ji Tianqing was very familiar with the various magical abilities of the demonic Tao. The other party had Elder Wuxia's information and used some demonic arts, so it wasn't strange for them to find him. He looked expressionlessly at Devil Monarch Blood. If I'm not wrong, you should be the city lord of Black Sun City. With the strength of the 8th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, he should be one of the 36 demon monarchs. Demon Lord Blood immediately revealed a proud look and sneered, that's right. I am the 9th Devil Monarch, Shui Yu. After that, he pointed at the ghost shadow Devil Monarch beside him and said arrogantly, this one beside me is the 4th Devil Monarch, Ghost Shadow. Ji Tianqing, this sovereign and the ghostly shadow Devil Monarch have joined hands and mobilized more than 450 elite experts to set up the heavenly devil god-slaying array here, just to kill you on the spot. You're a smart person. You should know that you're going to die today. Demon Lord Blood's powerful voice rang out in the air above the abyss, spreading for a radius of 200 miles. Hearing this, all the demons sneered complacently. Ji Tianqing didn't care and sneered disdainfully. You're just a mere demon monarch. Even if you have more than 400 lackeys, you're still a clown. Where did you get the courage to be so arrogant? Even your Shui Pao ancestor and Azura demon saint will die under my sword. Who do you think you are? Such arrogant words made Demon Lord Blood so angry that his face turned black, and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. Ghost Shadow Devil Monarch, who had been silent, finally stepped forward and spoke. His turbid old eyes revealed a sinister light as he sneered, the 2 demon saints were careless and fell into the trap of a despicable person like you. Now, we've set up the heavenly devil god-slaying array to kill you. Let's see how you're going to escape. With more than 400 nascent soul realm experts controlling the array, it's enough to kill 99% of the martial saints. No matter how capable you are, you will still be crushed to pieces today, dying without a burial ground. You can spout as much nonsense as you want. In any case, these are your last words. Seeing this, Yun Yao frowned slightly. Suddenly understanding something, she hastily sent a sound transmission to Ji Tianqing. Tianqing, the demon race has always been sinister and crafty. These people are just stalling for time. Luo Li also heard her sound transmission and said, "That's right. They have the advantage, but they're not in a rush to attack. They truly are afraid of our strength and are trying to stall for time. However, Yao Yao, don't be in such a rush. If they're stalling for time, isn't your husband also stalling for time?" Oh. Yun Yao raised an eyebrow and looked at Ji Tianqing in puzzlement. Ji Tianqing was still arguing with the two devil sovereigns. He secretly sent her an explanation. Shuiyu and Guiying, the two devil sovereigns, have brought many experts to surround them, but they aren't confident in succeeding. They definitely have a backup plan. They're just trying to stall for time and wait for the demon saint experts to come. That's why we can't fight them. We have to end this quickly and leave this place. Yun Yao immediately understood what he meant. She hastily asked, "Tianqing, what method do you have?" Ji Tianqing said, "I've already performed the God-Eye mystic art to see through this heavenly devil god-slaying formation. This is a top-tier tribulation-level formation with extraordinary power. However, I've already found 3 weak points in the formation. I've secretly controlled the energy of heaven and earth to accumulate enough energy. Once the battle starts, I'll break the formation and bring everyone out. So that's how it is." Yun Yao immediately understood and said without the slightest hesitation, "Tianqing, don't worry. We'll cover you." Just as she said that, Shuiyu and Ghost Shadow were infuriated by Ji Tianqing. They could no longer suppress their killing intent. Demon Monarch Shuiyu immediately gave the order and roared, "Ji Tianqing. You arrogant bastard. This monarch will kill you right now and grind your bones to dust. Activate the formation with all your strength and kill him for me." Upon hearing his command, more than 400 primordial soul realm experts activated the formation with all their might and released powerful attacks. The huge blood-red barrier immediately released black fog, blood-red light and soul fire. They formed 100,000 blades of light and blood-red fire that rained down on Ji Tianqing and the other two. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, the area above the abyss became a world of blood-red light and blue fire. The destructive power poured down, making it impossible for Ji Tianqing and the other two demon monarchs and the two demon monarchs to dodge. The two demon monarchs roared angrily and used their huge bodies to protect everyone. At the same time, they spat out dragon breath at the blood-red light and soul fire that filled the sky. "Ji Tianqing, break the formation quickly. I'll cover you." Chapter 2027. Boom. 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 Intense collisions sounded in the sky above the abyss. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, Luo Li, the Black Dragon, and the Glazed Fire Dragon were all fighting with all their might to resist the power of the demon god-slaying array. Colorful dermic powers collided fiercely and created a sky full of debris. It was like a fire that shot into the sky and lit up the surrounding hundreds of miles. Violent and devastating shockwaves violently burst forth, causing the surrounding abysses to collapse under the impact. The earth shook violently, and the cliffs on both sides of the abyss also cracked continuously. An endless amount of gravel and soil fell to the bottom of the abyss, making muffled rumbling noises. The area immediately became chaotic. Luo Li did as she said. She led the charge and resisted the power of the array with all her might, trying her best to protect Yun Yao. The two divine dragons also fought back with all their might and used all kinds of Dragon Clan secret techniques. However, everyone could only resist the power of the array. The effect of the counterattack was very weak. It was absolutely impossible to break the formation. This was what Ji Tianqing had expected. Therefore, when the battle started, he cast spells to resist the power of the array and to break the array at the same time. He quietly approached the southwest corner and secretly controlled the power of heaven and earth. He released a powerful force that could penetrate everything and attacked the blood-light barrier. Boom! Crack! Following a thunderous boom, a shallow crack appeared on the blood-red light barrier, and it began to tremble violently. About 100 feet away from the crack, there were two Essence Soul Realm experts who were focused on casting spells. They did not expect that the formation would suddenly be attacked and cracks would appear. The powerful impact forced the two of them back 10 steps. Their faces were as pale as paper. The two of them widened their eyes in shock. They could not believe what they had just seen. After regaining their senses, the two of them hurriedly flew back to their original positions and cast spells with all their might to repair the long crack. In the southwest corner, there were 3 formation nodes and over 100 formation veins in the bloody light barrier, which was about 30 meters wide. Ordinary people might not be able to see the clues, but Ji Tianqing could see that this was one of the 3 weak points of the formation. He wanted to use this as a breakthrough point to blast open the heavenly demon god-slaying formation and lead everyone out of the encirclement. Piercing sword! Ji Tianqing coldly shouted. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he unleashed his full power and fiercely stabbed out. Swish! A speck of cold light suddenly appeared, as if it had disappeared. In the next instant, the cold light pierced through the crack in the blood-light barrier and exploded. Boom! A dazzling cold light suddenly blossomed in the crack, like a mushroom cloud. The crack, which was more than 3 zhang long, suddenly expanded several times. It was torn to 10 zhang long, which was the width of a palm. Unfortunately, the blood-light barrier was not completely broken. There was still a thin layer of blood-light in the cracks. Ji Tianqing saw the hope of escaping. His spirits were lifted. He once again waved the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed at the crack. However, the 2 devil monarchs and the 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, who were standing above the abyss, had already noticed the clues. Everyone's primary target was him, so their attention was always on him. When he blasted a crack in the blood-light barrier, the 2 devil monarchs were already furious and sent people to stop him. At this moment, he was about to stab the crack with his sword. The 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage had already entered the array and pounced on him with murderous intent. Thief, don't even think about escaping. Lowly human reptile, don't even think about destroying the array. Ji Tianqing. Today, you will die without a doubt. There will be no escape. Thief, give me your life. The 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, including Elder Wuxia, all held their weapons and magic treasures. They desperately performed their secret methods and besieged Ji Tianqing. The mountain-like evil demon's shadow, the overwhelming blood-red light, the ice-blue soul fire, and all kinds of black light and sharp blades, as well as the highly toxic black fog, poured down in torrents. The area within a radius of 10 miles was covered. Ji Tianqing was in danger and could only turn around to face the enemies. He used the heavenly dragon's 7 steps and his body turned into a white light phantom. He flashed in the blood light all over the sky and dodged all kinds of attacks. At the same time, he waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand and slashed out sword light all over the sky. 7 stars sword. 49 huge golden swords, all of which were more than 300 zhang long, were very powerful. Boom, 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 boom. With a series of dull noises, the 49 swordlights defeated all kinds of secret attacks. Although he successfully resolved the first round of attacks from the 12 powerhouses. However, the 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage were very brave and immediately launched a second round of fierce attacks. Monstrous demonic light. Floating blood sea. Grand Sun Black Soul Sword. Attacking life and seizing soul. Everyone was full of killing intent. They roared with ferocious faces and used their trump cards to besiege Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing couldn't get away, nor could he continue to break the array. He could only concentrate on resisting and fighting back. In just 10 breaths, the two sides had exchanged more than a dozen moves in the array. Ji Tianqing was hit several times by the swords and was hit by the devil chi and the blood light blades more than a dozen times. However, his physical defense was comparable to that of a martial sage. The attacks of these powerhouses in the tribulation stage couldn't hurt him at all. However, the secret methods he used with all his strength destroyed the bodies of 3 powerhouses in the tribulation stage and injured 5 of them. Elder Wuxia was the devil he hated the most. Of course, he had the worst ending. Not only was his body smashed into powder, but his divine soul was also seriously injured. He turned into a ball of dark purple light and floated in the sky above the abyss. It was a pity that these Devil Clan powerhouses were not afraid of death. They had been blinded by anger and killing intent. They didn't know fear at all and didn't retreat at all. They continued to besiege Ji Tianqing without caring about anything. Even if they died on the spot, they still wanted to bite off a piece of meat from Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing felt a headache coming on. He only wanted to kill these Devil Clan powerhouses as soon as possible and continue to break the array. After all, the process of breaking the array couldn't be stopped halfway. Otherwise, the crack would be repaired, and it would heal soon. Unfortunately, these Devil Clan powerhouses were in the heavenly devil god-slaying array and their strength was greatly enhanced. In a short time, it would be difficult for Ji Tianqing to kill them. Just as Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with anxiety, a cold and clear voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Ji Tianqing, break the array quickly. I'm coming to help you. It was Luo Li's voice. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw Luo Li's body glowing with an icy blue brilliance. It was as if she was burning with flames as she rushed over like a stream of light. She held an ice crystal short sword in each hand and rushed toward the few Devil Clan powerhouses as fast as lightning. In an instant, she attacked 3 times, leaving behind 3 illusions. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the 3 Devil Clan powerhouses who were surrounded by the icy blue illusions froze on the spot and stopped moving. Their bodies ignited with icy blue flames and quickly turned into ashes, scattering in the sky. Chapter 2028. Luo Li was indeed a martial saint. She killed 3 Demon Clan powerhouses in an instant. The 3 Tribulation Realm powerhouses didn't even manage to see how Luo Li had acted even when they died. Seeing this scene, the other Demon Clan powerhouses were overwhelmed with shock and fear towards Luo Li. Everyone quietly took a few steps back and changed their formation to attack Luo Li together. Luo Li was fearless. She waved the ice crystal short sword with both hands and flashed through the crowd, killing one powerhouse after another. The pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced. He ignored the Demon Clan powerhouses and focused on breaking the array. In the southwest corner, the crack on the blood light barrier was more than half repaired. There was only a 2-foot-long crack left. Furthermore, the Blood Demon Monarch saw through it and gathered more than 20 Essence Soul Stage powerhouses to repair this area. At most, the crack would be repaired in 10 breaths of time. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's face darkened. His eyes were filled with cold murderous intent. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the Heaven Burier sword with both hands and slashed out a huge golden sword with all his strength, ruthlessly slashing at the crack. Kaboom! A deafening explosion sounded and the blood light barrier trembled violently. That shallow scar, which was more than 20 feet long, expanded to more than 80 feet long and about half a finger deep. The 20 Essence Soul Stage powerhouses were also hit by the huge impact. They all retreated 100 feet and were panting with pale faces. Ji Tianqing did not give them any time to breathe. He immediately raised his left palm and released a sacred golden flame. God-slaying spear. Whoosh! The sacred golden flames immediately transformed into a 3-meter-long divine spear. With a godly might that could pierce through all things, the spear viciously stabbed toward the crack. Kaboom! A thunderous boom resounded through the clouds and shook the heavens and the earth. The spear pierced the blood-light barrier and blasted a big hole in it. Dense cracks appeared on both sides of the hole, and the crack was completely torn apart. Along with a wave of crisp cracking sounds, the cracks exploded into pieces with a bang, and countless pieces of bloody light sprayed out. An 80-zhang long gap suddenly appeared. A destructive shockwave spread out in all directions. More than 20 immortal soul stage cultivators were sent tumbling in all directions by the impact of the impact. Everyone was covered in blood and wounds. Half of them had even fainted. The cliffs on both sides of the abyss also suffered from the destructive impact and completely collapsed. Inexhaustible rocks and soil poured into the abyss like a flood. For a time, the scene was extremely chaotic. Ji Tianqing made a prompt decision and rushed out of the gap. With a flash of his figure, he escaped from the ceiling formation. Not far away, Yun Yao and the 2 mystical dragons were rushing over with all their might. Luo Li was not in a hurry to retreat. While protecting Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons, she did not forget to kill the 2 powerhouses in the tribulation stage. Swoosh! Swoosh! 3 streaks of light flashed past consecutively. Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons passed through the gap and escaped from the heavenly devil god-slaying formation. Ji Tianqing rushed to the front, swinging his sword and killing more than 20 immortal divinity experts, like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep. Swing your sword. Broken moon sword. Broken sun sword. The ultimate sword techniques of the 9 swords of the burial of heaven were displayed one by one, and golden sword shadows covered the sky and earth. Those more than 20 immortal divinity experts were already severely injured. How could they resist his attacks? In a short while, more than 10 immortal divinity experts died under Ji Tianqing's sword. Not only was his physical body slashed to pieces, even his divine soul was shattered. The remaining few severely injured immortal divinity experts saw that the situation was not good and fled in advance. The obstacles outside the formation were swept away. There were no more obstacles in front of them. Ji Tianqing hurriedly brought Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons and flew towards the north of the abyss. However, just as he flew 1,000 feet away, 2 streaks of bright red light flashed in front of him and blocked his way. He took a closer look and saw that it was the Ghost Shadow Demon Lord and the Ancient Blood Demon Lord. Behind the 2 of them, there were more than 40 immortal divinity experts. All of them were rushing over with murderous intent. The hundreds of immortal soul stage elders around the blood-light barrier also surged forward under the command of the Ancient Blood Demon Lord. Since Ji Tianqing and the rest had already escaped from the formation, there was no point in them continuing to control the formation. Therefore, they rushed over to surround and intercept Ji Tianqing and the rest. Ji Tianqing, you have indeed impressed me. You actually managed to break the demon god-slaying formation. However, I have already said that you will definitely die today. I will not let you escape. The Ancient Blood Demon Lord stared at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious expression and shouted in a cold voice. As he finished speaking, he held a 5-feet-long blood-red sword in his hands and charged towards Ji Tianqing. The Ancient Blood Demon Lord also changed his old appearance. He waved his ghost head staff and released hundreds of evil spirits that pounced towards Ji Tianqing. The immortal divinity experts in all directions also lined up in battle formations. They worked together to release sharp blood-red blades that flooded the area within a 10-mile radius. Another fierce battle broke out in an instant. Ji Tianqing held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and fought against 2 demon lords alone. He used all kinds of secret techniques and had the upper hand. The 2 demon lords were not his match even when they joined forces. They were forced to retreat and were constantly injured. Fortunately, there were hundreds of immortal divinity experts surrounding Ji Tianqing and restraining him. They were always able to help the two demon lords out. If not, the two demon lords would have ended up in an even more tragic state. Yun Yao and the two divine dragons were surrounded by hundreds of immortal divinity experts and were in a very dangerous situation. They were exhausted from defending against the attacks and could only retreat continuously. There was no way for them to counterattack. This was especially so for the two mystical dragons. In order to protect Yun Yao's safety, they were covered in injuries. Fortunately, Luo Li arrived in time. She used a secret technique to protect herself and formed a dark yellow shield to protect Yun Yao. At the same time, she released a destructive sword blade storm. 100,000 ice crystal blades formed a hurricane and started a massacre in the sky. Once those immortal divinity experts were swept up by the sword blade storm, they would be smashed to pieces and their souls destroyed. Everyone fought as they fled. They kept moving the battlefield away from the Black Sun Abyss. After 2 hours, the battle finally came to an end. Luo Li's methods were the most terrifying and she killed the most people. She alone had killed more than 200 immortal divinity stage experts. In addition to the 10 tribulation stage experts she had killed earlier, her battle achievements could be said to be outstanding. Moreover, she was completely unscathed. No one could hurt her. Ji Tianqing also killed dozens of immortal divinity experts and even Evil Blood Demon Lord. Even Evil Blood Demon Lord's arms were cut off and his body was almost destroyed. He was severely injured. As for himself, he only suffered some minor injuries. His white robe was stained with demon blood and he looked a little miserable. As for Yun Yao and the two divine dragons, they did not kill many enemies, but they were seriously injured. If not for Luo Li and Ji Tianqing's protection, they would have been in deep trouble. At this point, the demons were almost completely wiped out. Only Evil Blood Demon Lord and more than 30 injured experts were left. Chapter 2029. Spectre Demon Monarch fled back to Black Sun City in a sorry state with a bunch of defeated soldiers. Ji Tianqing, Luo Li, and the others didn't waste time chasing after them. Riding the two dragons, they continued to fly north, getting further and further away from Black Sun City. 12 hours later, it was dawn. Everyone stopped to rest and recuperate in a desolate mountain range. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li were fine. They just took out a few pills and quickly recovered their magic power. Yun Yao was only slightly injured. After being treated by Ji Tianqing taking medicinal pills to recuperate, there was no problem. The two dragons were the most seriously injured. They were covered in blood, wounds, and holes. Many dragon scales had fallen off. Fortunately, the dragon clan's recovery ability was strong. After Ji Tianqing and Luo Li's treatment, their injuries quickly stabilized. Everyone hid in the depths of the mountain range and recuperated for an entire day. Until the next morning, when the two dragons had recovered 80% of their strength, they continued on their journey. The glazed fire dragon and the black dragon flew side by side, rushing north. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li stood on the back of the dragons, looking ahead calmly and talking through voice transmissions. In the Battle of the Black Sun Abyss, we were attacked by more than 400 experts, but we were able to escape smoothly and kill 90% of the Demon Clan experts. It's incredible. If this matter were to spread, it would cause an uproar on the continent and shock the world. Ji Tianqing said with a calm expression as he glanced at Luo Li. Luo Li looked ahead expressionlessly and said coldly, "I've only heard that the Demon Clan is bloodthirsty and inhumane. After the Demon Clan army invaded the Kingdom of God, I didn't go to the northern border to participate in the battle. Now that I've gone deep into the Demon Clan's hinterland and fought with them personally, I know how hateful and terrifying the Demon Clan is. Such a sinister, cunning, cruel, and bloodthirsty race deserves to be killed." After saying that, she turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing and said indifferently, "As for the shock and discussion of the world, it's just a false reputation. I don't need it. Ji Tianqing looked straight ahead with a playful smile on his face. In the past, he only knew that Luoli had a noble status, a cold personality, and powerful strength. Now, after so many days of interaction, he finally understood Luoli better. The three of them were silent, temporarily unable to say anything. Yunyao broke the silence and said worriedly, the previous battles were all small skirmishes. The battle in the Black Sun Abyss this time will definitely catch the attention of the devil race. Our identities and whereabouts will be completely exposed. From now on, our operations will become more and more dangerous and difficult. We must be even more careful. Ji Tianqing nodded and said solemnly, there are no divine pearls in the Black Sun Abyss. Our next target is the Ghost Desert, which is millions of miles away. It's one of the few forbidden areas of the devil race. It's rumored to be the remains of an ancient battlefield and is extremely dangerous. Not only are there powerful demonic beasts, but there are also demonic experts, ghosts, and demons. Even the environment of the Ghost Desert is very harsh and there are many hidden formations and traps. Luoli waved her hand and said indifferently, although the Ghost Desert is a forbidden area, it's nothing to us. The only ones who are a threat to us are the four great demon saints of the devil race. I have a premonition that if the fourth divine pearl is really in the North Underworld Mountain, it's very likely to be in the Ghost Desert. Yunyao frowned and asked in puzzlement, Luoli, why are you so sure? Luoli thought for a moment and shook her head, I don't know why. It's just a premonition. Ji Tianqing smiled and said playfully, I hope your premonition is accurate. If so, we will be able to complete the mission soon. Otherwise, we will have to search for the third target and go deeper into the North Underworld Mountain. The situation will be even more dangerous. A cold light flashed in Luoli's eyes and she said coldly, despicable devil race, I will kill them all. No matter how dangerous it is, I will help Yao Yao complete the mission and return to the kingdom of God smoothly. She was absolutely loyal to the Luoshui martial god. Even if she had to pay with her life, she would complete the mission given by the Luoshui martial god. Unknowingly, 6 days had passed. In the evening, the two divine dragons carried Ji Tianqing and the other two to the Ghost Desert. It was a vast desert and it was said that it was hundreds of thousands of miles wide. The desert was surrounded by majestic mountains and it was like a tall city wall that protected the Ghost Desert. The Ghost Desert was very low and there were no pools of water. It had been dry and barren since ancient times. What was even stranger was that the endless sand in the desert was not golden but dark brown. Looking from afar, the pitch-black desert was filled with a thin layer of black fog and it looked very mysterious. The closer it was to the night, the colder the temperature in the desert was. The mysterious black fog was getting thicker and thicker and it formed layers of fog barriers that blocked the view of the desert. After the two divine dragons flew into the Ghost Desert, they quickly disappeared into the mysterious black fog. The two of them slowed down and flew deeper into the desert while releasing their divine senses to check the surroundings. Ji Tianqing, Luoli, and Yunyao were not idle as they released their divine senses to search the desert. The Ghost Desert is too vast and has a radius of at least 500,000 miles. If we were to search like this, we would not miss anything, but it would take us at least half a month. Half a month? That would be enough for the devil race to deploy their troops. I'm afraid that before we find the God Pearl, the four great devil sages will bring an army of 100,000 to besiege us. If I am close to the God Pearl, I will be able to sense it. I hope that the heavens will watch over us and let us find the God Pearl soon, the three of them discussed as they searched the desert. 4 hours later, trouble came for them. More than 10 ferocious-looking spirits appeared around them and floated silently in the night sky. Those spirits were about 300 meters tall and had green faces and fangs. Their hair was disheveled, and they looked terrifying. They did not have legs, but they had 3 heads and 6 arms. Their appearance was so strange that it sent chills down one's spine. More importantly, the strength of those spirits was comparable to a powerhouse in the fifth or sixth stage of the tribulation transcendence realm. Ji Tianqing used the God's Eye secret technique and discovered that the spirits were formed by various remnant souls. There were remnant souls of ancient powerhouses, modern adventurers, and devil race powerhouses. There were even remnant souls of powerful devil beasts. All in all, these spirits were very powerful. They would constantly kill living beings and devour their remnant souls to strengthen themselves. Their intelligence was not high, and their aura was very chaotic. However, they did not know pain or fear. They only acted based on their instincts and had an almost immortal body. Ji Tianqing glanced at Luo Li and saw that she was frowning as she observed the spirits. He reminded her, spirits are ghosts and are not made of flesh and blood. You cannot use normal spells to deal with them. Chapter 2030. Although the dozens of ghosts, whose strength was comparable to a powerhouse in the crossing calamity stage, were indeed ferocious and terrifying. However, to Ji Tianqing and the other two, they were not considered dangerous. They were just a little troublesome. The three of them had mastered the soul's secret technique. They used the soul's secret technique one after another and quickly defeated the dozens of ghosts. However, the ghosts were extremely tenacious. Even if they were smashed into pieces, they could still be pieced together and continue to fight. Even Luo Li had to expend a lot of effort before she was able to kill the two ghosts. As for the remaining ghosts, Ji Tianqing used the divine light of the heaven patching pearl to purify and disperse them. The three of them spent more than an hour to solve this problem. Fortunately, no one was injured. The three of them rested for a while and continued to search in the ghost desert. The next morning, the three of them rode on the two divine dragons and were searching in the desert. Suddenly, a black and purple streamer flew from the sky and fell into Ji Tianqing's palm. After the streamer disappeared, a jade slip appeared. Ji Tianqing lowered his head and looked at the jade slip. He raised his eyebrows subconsciously and was a little confused. Yunyao also turned her head and looked at him. She could not help but ask, Tianqing, who sent you the communication jade slip? Luo Li stared at the communication jade slip. Her face became gloomy and she asked coldly, that's strange. The communication jade slip in your palm is actually black and purple and contains demon qi. Ji Tianqing, did the demon clan send you a message? Are you in contact with the demon clan? Seeing that Luo Li was suspicious, Ji Tianqing calmly explained, it is indeed the communication jade slip that the demon clan usually uses. However, the person who sent me the message is not a demon clan member. It is my family member who has infiltrated the demon clan to be my spy. Family member? Informant? Yunyao immediately frowned. She was full of doubts, but she couldn't think of a reason. Luo Li was also confused. She shook her head and said, your family member. Then, it is a human. How can a human disguise as a demon clan member? Ji Tianqing did not explain further. He lowered his head and looked at the communication jade slip. He used his divine sense to read the content. The content of the jade slip was very short. There was only one short sentence. Brother Tianqing, a few days ago, the great demon saint led a large group of experts and left the demon palace. He said that he would kill you personally. Run. The words in the jade slip were of course from Ji Ku's mouth. Her tone was very anxious and urgent. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned with a serious look in his eyes. Yunyao and Luo Li were puzzled and quickly asked, Tianqing, what's the news? What the hell is going on? Ji Tianqing slowly put away the communication jade slip. He looked at Yunyao and said in a serious tone, Yao Yao, there's something I haven't told you. Demon 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 god. To the demon 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 demon. Those experts were captured and brought back to the demon demon god's lair. He used an ancient demon Dao secret technique to refine them into blood-robed guards. Unfortunately, Ko was among them. She was also captured and brought to the demon clan's lair. But fortunately, she had another fortuitous encounter and was not truly demonized. Since then, she has been hiding in the demon clan's lair. She often sends me messages and reports. What? It was the first time that Yun Yao had heard of this. She was shocked and worried. She was captured and brought to the demon clan's lair. She became a blood-robed guard. No. This is too dangerous. The demon clan has always been treacherous and cunning. Ko is hiding in the demon clan's lair and often sends you messages. Her identity will be exposed sooner or later. Doesn't she want to live anymore? Tianqing, you have to make her leave as soon as possible. Tianqing looked at her calmly. He shook his head and said, Yao, I tried to persuade Ko, but she insisted on being a spy. I couldn't persuade her. However, you don't have to worry too much. Ko has a treasure to protect her body. Her disguise is perfect. Even I can't tell the difference. Even if she really encounters danger, that treasure can protect her. She won't lose her life. Hearing his words, Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief and felt much more at ease. Luo Li couldn't wait any longer. She asked, Tianqing, did Ko send you a message? Did she report the demon clan's lair? Tianqing nodded and said, Ko sent me a message. The great demon saint has left the demon clan's lair with a large number of experts to kill us. This time, the enemy has a lot of people. They are coming with great momentum. They are determined to win. The great demon saint. Yun Yao frowned and said worriedly, before the return of the ancestor demon god, he was the strongest expert of the demon clan. He was the expert closest to becoming a god. We have to leave the North Underworld mountain as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will be in danger of losing our lives. Luo Li's pupils shrank. A sharp cold light flashed in her eyes. However, she wasn't afraid. She said proudly, I have heard of the great demon saint's fierce name. However, I have never had the chance to see it. If he really finds us, I will fight with him and see how strong he is. Yao, don't worry. With me here, no one can hurt you. Tianqing glanced at Luo Li. He didn't refute her. He said in a low voice, it will take at most 10 days to get here from the demon clan's lair. We don't have much time. After 10 days, the great demon saint will find us. Of course, we have to find the god bead. No matter how dangerous it is, we can't give up. However, we only want to find the god bead. We can't fight with the great demon saint for now. Yun Yao and Luo Li nodded. They didn't refute. For the next 8 days, Tianqing and the other 2 divine dragons carried out a thorough search in the desert. During this period, they encountered many troubles. Every day, there would be groups of ghosts coming to besiege them, trying to devour their souls and flesh. These ghosts were quite strong and difficult to deal with. It took a lot of effort for them to deal with them. Other than the ghosts, they also encountered terrifying quicksand, fire, cracks in the void, and other dangers. There were a few times when the 2 divine dragons were injured to protect them. The 3 of them managed to turn danger into safety, successfully overcoming the crisis. After 8 days of searching, Tianqing and the rest finally understood why the Ghost Desert was called a forbidden area. Even an ordinary tribulation stage expert would find it difficult to survive in this place. They could lose their lives at any time. On the 9th day, Tianqing and the other 2 had already searched 70% of the Ghost Desert. It was a pity that they didn't find any information or clues about the god bead even though they had experienced many dangers. The 3 of them were tired. They were covered in dust and their eyes were dim. The flame of hope in their hearts was also gradually weakening. However, God's arrangement was always so wonderful. The more you look forward to it, the harder it is to fulfill your wish. Chapter 2031. It was noon, the time when the power of the stars was the strongest. The thick clouds and black aura in the sky above the ghost desert had faded a lot. Faint golden light spilled down from the gaps in the clouds. The ghost desert, which had always been dark and gloomy, was dispelled a little bit and brightened up. At this moment, while Ji Tianqing, Luo Li, and Luo Li were flying over a low-lying sandy area, Yun Yao suddenly frowned. "Stop!" She, who had always been calm and quiet, suddenly ordered the glazed fiery dragon to stop. The glazed fiery dragon immediately stopped. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li also turned to look at Yun Yao with expectant eyes. "Yao Yao, what's wrong? Yao Yao, why did you suddenly stop? Did you sense something?" Yun Yao didn't say anything. She stood still on the back of the glazed fiery dragon and closed her eyes. She lowered her head slightly and held it with both hands. She seemed to be listening to something or thinking deeply. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing and Luo Li guessed that she must have sensed something. Sure enough, after around 20 breaths of time, Yun Yao's body suddenly trembled, and she opened her eyes. She revealed a face full of surprise and joy, her clear eyes bursting with a thick light of joy. "I knew it. It's the God Orb. It must be the aura of the God Orb." She looked towards the northwest with sparkling eyes and said excitedly, "Tianqing, Luo Li, I just sensed the aura of the God Orb. It's in that direction." Ji Tianqing and Luo Li looked at each other and were also pleasantly surprised. They were happy for Yun Yao. "Yao Yao, are you serious? Yao Yao, you really sense the aura of the God Orb?" Yun Yao nodded with certainty. "Although it's just a slight aura, I'm not wrong. It's the aura of the God Orb." To her, the God Orb was the most intimate, familiar, and important thing in her soul. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li both believed that she wouldn't make a mistake. Thus, the three of them did not hesitate any longer. They hurriedly rode the divine dragon and flew towards the northwest. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li rode on their respective divine dragons to observe the surrounding terrain and use their divine senses to explore their surroundings. Yun Yao sat on the fire dragon's back and concentrated on sensing the divine pearl. "Over there. Go a little further west. It shouldn't be too far away. Just another 50 li to the north. It's getting closer and closer. I can feel the aura of the divine orb becoming clearer and clearer. It's just north of us, 200 miles away, right there." Yun Yao sensed the aura of the divine orb and pointed the way for Ji Tianqing and Luo Li. Half an hour later, the three of them had flown over 1,000 miles and arrived at their destination. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li frowned when they heard what Yun Yao said about the place where the sacred pearl was hidden. All around them was a boundless black desert. In front of them, there was a whirlpool with a radius of 100 miles. It was a bottomless pit formed by black sand. The bottom of the pit was dark and empty, and it kept swallowing the sand. The terrain here was the lowest. The black sand from all directions gathered here and was swallowed by the black hole in the whirlpool. No one knew where the black hole was connected to. No matter how much sand was poured in, it couldn't be filled up. It's so strange. If there are whirlpools in the sea, there must be an eye of the sea. How can there be a whirlpool in the desert? Luo Li stood in the sky and looked down at the whirlpool. She frowned in confusion. Ji Tianqing stared at the whirlpool and observed it for a while. He then said seriously, "Under some circumstances, sand is no different from seawater. They will both flow with the waves. If I'm not wrong, the black hole under the black sand whirlpool is connected to an alternate dimension. That's why it can't be filled up." Luo Li and Yun Yao were enlightened when they heard that. They nodded to show that they understood. "I see. I wonder where this whirlpool that appeared in the center of the ghost desert is connected to an alternate dimension. Where does it lead to?" The two girls stared at the black hole at the bottom of the whirlpool. Their eyes were shining as if they wanted to see through it. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a smile as he teased, perhaps it's an ancient ruin, or perhaps it's a demon's den. Of course, it could also be an abandoned space. After he said that, he turned to Yun Yao and asked, Yao Yao, you're very close to the God Pearl now. You should be able to determine the approximate location of the God Pearl, right? Yun Yao nodded and pointed to the bottom of the whirlpool. She said with certainty, the aura of the God Pearl is coming from the bottom of the whirlpool. It seems like the God Pearl is in the alternate dimension at the bottom of the whirlpool. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. No wonder you kept saying that the aura of the God Pearl is very weak. Previously, I thought that the God Pearl had been lost for too long and its power had weakened. Now that I think about it, the God Pearl is actually hidden in the alternate dimension. No wonder its aura is so weak. Since the God Pearl was hidden under the whirlpool, the three of them naturally had to enter the whirlpool to search for it. However, the black sand whirlpool was filled with black gas. It was mysterious and eerie. One look and they could tell that it was an extremely dangerous place. Of course, the three of them would not enter rashly. They still had to make some preparations. Ji Tianqing said with a solemn face, the ghost desert is a forbidden area. The black sand whirlpool in the center of the desert is even more dangerous. I dare to guess that there are definitely many experts who have discovered this black sand whirlpool. However, ordinary people do not dare to enter it. Most of the people who enter rashly are either dead or have fallen. We must be careful. Yun Yao nodded in agreement. Luo Li said expressionlessly, we know what you said very well. There's no need to say anything else. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else and went straight to the point. I'll go down first and scout ahead. Luo Li will follow behind me. If there's an unexpected situation, she can take care of me and protect Yao Yao. Yao Yao will follow behind Luo Li, Lu Li and Black Dragon will bring up the rear. Pay attention to protecting Yao Yao. After assigning the tasks, he held the sword of burial of heaven and stepped into the black sand whirlpool first. Swoosh! As soon as he entered the black sand whirlpool, a terrifying suction force attacked and enveloped Ji Tianqing's body. The suction force was extraordinary. Even a tribulation stage expert would find it difficult to resist. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing was already prepared. After his body shook a few times, he quickly stabilized. Everyone, be careful. He shouted in a low voice and cast a spell to form a magic shield. Then, he flew toward the bottom of the whirlpool. Luo Li, Yun Yao, and the two divine dragons followed behind him and landed at a moderate speed. The deeper they went into the whirlpool, the stronger the suction force they had to endure. At the same time, the endless black fog and demonic aura, as well as the fierce wind that was as sharp as swords, were constantly corroding and killing them. Ji Tianqing tried his best to resist, while Luo Li dealt with it calmly. She still had the strength to protect Yun Yao. The two divine dragons could only resist with all their might and proceed cautiously. Finally, after an hour, everyone reached the bottom of the black sand whirlpool. Chapter 2032. Ji Tianqing stopped in his tracks and stared at the black hole under his feet. He frowned in confusion. He could clearly sense that the black hole was not ordinary. It actually released a powerful void power. Moreover, this black hole looked circular. In fact, the edges of the black hole were not neat. There were many cracks and corners. It was like a mirror that had a big hole punched out. Strange, this black hole is actually a void crack. And it doesn't look like it was formed naturally. When I was under the broken soul cliff, I also found a void crack that led to the void outside the world. That void crack was caused by the collision of the star core of the illusory spirit world. I wonder, how did this void crack appear? Just as Ji Tianqing was pondering, Luo Li behind him urged impatiently, Ji Tianqing, what are you doing here? Go in quickly. This is the most dangerous place. If we stay any longer, we will consume a lot of our magic power. It is also very dangerous. Ji Tianqing nodded and reminded them, this black hole is a void crack. After passing through the black hole, it is very likely to be the void. Everyone, be careful. Hearing his words, Luoli could not help but frown. She quickly cast a spell to form a shield to protect Yunyao. Of course, she could distinguish the void power and knew that Ji Tianqing was not lying. She also knew that only martial sages could walk in the void. It was very dangerous for tribulation stage powerhouses to stay in the void. They could lose their lives at any time. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing stepped into the black hole first. His figure flashed and was swallowed by the darkness. Luoli followed without hesitation and disappeared into the black hole. Then, Yunyao and the two divine dragons entered one after another. Silence was restored in the vortex as if no one had been there. Swoosh! In the next moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly felt his body become light and entered a cold and dark space. He used his magic power to protect his body. He quickly opened his eyes and released his divine sense to explore his surroundings. After seeing the surroundings clearly, he immediately frowned and revealed a playful expression. Sure enough, I have really entered the void. Just as he expected, he was now standing in the vast and icy cold void. In all directions, within a radius of several thousand miles, there was nothing at all. Behind him was the vast void. In the distance, he could vaguely see dense silver light dots that were shining brightly. Those were the billions of stars in the universe. And in front of him, about 100,000 miles away, was an extremely huge and colorful star. The surface of the star was shrouded in a layer of faint golden light. It was tranquil and peaceful. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this huge star. This was the five elements world that he lived in. In the next moment, Luoli, Yunyao, and the two divine dragons appeared beside him. Luoli, on the other hand, was still fine. She didn't need to use her magic power to protect her body, and she was able to stay in the void without any injuries. Yunyao was protected by a shield, so she was safe. However, even though the glazed fire dragon and the black dragon had the bodies of divine dragons, they could not withstand the power of the void. The two divine dragons were trembling and they felt as though their bodies were being pricked by needles. In the gaps between the dragon scales, there were small wounds and some fine drops of blood seeped out. When Ji Tianqing saw this, he knew that the two of them could not stay in the void. Otherwise, they would be injured. Black Dragon, return to the sword and rest. As he spoke, he waved his hand and a ray of golden light shot out, sending the Black Dragon into the sword world. Yunyao also hurriedly took out a fiery red jade box and stored the glazed fire dragon inside. In the void, only Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Luoli were left. Yunyao looked around and her face and eyes were filled with shock and surprise. This is unbelievable. So this is the void. This is the first time I have seen it with my own eyes. I didn't expect the five elements world that we are in to be like this. Luoli nodded in agreement and said emotionally, the cultivation of martial arts is the process of strengthening oneself and understanding the universe. Only when one reaches the martial sage realm can one walk in the void and see the void. Even though I have entered the void many times, I only stayed for a short while. The beautiful and eternal void is something that I can never get enough of. Ji Tianqing did not interrupt. He looked at the five elements world and observed the direction that they had come from. It was a pity that they were too far away and he did not see anything strange. He waited for an hour and waited for Yunyao and Luoli to finish admiring the void. Then, he flew back with the two ladies. Luoli was puzzled and asked, Ji Tianqing, it is rare for you to enter the void. You should take a few more looks at such a magnificent void. It will be beneficial for your cultivation in the future. Are you in such a hurry to go back? Don't you want to look at it for a while longer? Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "It is just the void. It will not change. What is there to look at? Don't forget that we are here to look for the divine pearl. We have to finish our business as soon as possible." Luoli frowned again and asked, "Look for the divine pearl? Then we have to find the alternate space connected to the vortex. What is the use of going back in such a hurry?" Ji Tianqing looked at the five elements world in front of him and pointed at the mysterious golden light. He said, "If I am not wrong, the answer is there." Luo Li glanced at him and looked at the five elements world suspiciously. Naturally, she did not believe him. However, Ji Tianqing insisted on checking it out. She could only be patient. Soon, 12 hours had passed. The three of them flew for 120,000 miles in the void before they reached the edge of the five elements world and arrived at the golden light seal. Only when he got closer could he see that there was a metal block that was over 10 miles long embedded in the hazy golden barrier. The bronze-colored metal block was elongated, like a primitive mineral vein. Its shape was not regular. Its surface was distorted and full of holes. At first glance, the huge metal block looked like a sharp knife that pierced through the golden light barrier and stabbed into the five elements world. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing revealed a faint smile and nodded to himself. Indeed, as I expected. Another foreign object hit the five elements world and pierced a crack in the void. However, this huge metal block. Why does it look so familiar? He vaguely felt that the curved and rough metal block did not look like a mine or a star core. It looked like a divine ship driven by the upper realm gods. However, this divine ship had been destroyed and was completely deformed. That was why he could not recognize it. Luo Li and Yun Yao also stared at the metal block and looked excited and expectant. "Tianqing, you have good eyesight. You can see this strange metal block from hundreds of thousands of miles away." "Yao Yao, don't flatter Ji Tianqing." Luo Li rolled her eyes at Yun Yao and pretended to be serious. "You want to see a metal block that's 10 miles long from hundreds of thousands of miles away? That's like letting you see a mosquito that's thousands of miles away." Yun Yao was not angry when she heard this. Instead, she was even more excited and expectant. So, Tianqing didn't see this metal block, but he already knew that there was a problem here. Chapter 2033. Yun Yao's words proved Ji Tianqing's conjecture. The three of them hurriedly flew through the void and landed on the huge piece of metal. During the flight, Luo Li frowned and sized up Ji Tianqing. She looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Ji Tianqing did not look sideways. He only stared at the piece of metal and did not care about Luo Li's reaction. Just as they were about to land on the bronze metal, Luo Li could not help but ask, "Ji Tianqing, how do you know there's a problem here? You can't see this piece of metal from hundreds of thousands of miles away." Ji Tianqing glanced at her and said calmly, "I don't rely on my eyes. I rely on this." As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at his head. Luo Li's expression froze. She frowned and muttered unhappily in her heart, "Despicable bastard, how dare he mock me for being brainless? This bastard, it's as if he didn't say anything. He must have come to the void and experienced something like this before to be able to think of this. But that's not right. With his strength, it's impossible for him to break through the spatial barrier and come to the void." The more Luo Li thought about it, the more confused she became. She only felt that Ji Tianqing was too mysterious, making it harder for her to see through him. After a while, the three of them landed on the huge piece of bronze metal. Everyone spread out and observed this piece of metal from a close distance, looking for the whereabouts of the divine pearl. Only then did Ji Tianqing realize that his guess was completely correct. This piece of bronze metal was the battleship that the deity had piloted. However, the deity battleship was severely damaged. It was already broken and distorted to the extreme, and only a wreckage was left. He could roughly see that the deity battleship was originally exquisite and magnificent, divine and majestic. This deity battleship was at least a deity battleship. In its complete state, it was at least 30 miles long and could accommodate 100,000 soldiers. However, the destructive battle had caused the deity battleship to be distorted and deformed, turning it into scrap metal. Even the surface of the metal was covered with burn marks from the divine fire. The deity battleship fell from the void like a meteor streaking across the void. More than half of it was burned. Therefore, when the deity battleship finally reached this place, only a blurry wreckage was left. Even so, the divine warship was made of superior divine metal and was extremely sturdy. After crashing into the Five Elements world, the wreckage of the divine warship broke through the golden light seal and pierced through the spatial barrier. It was precisely because of this that a spatial tear had appeared in the Ghost Desert and was difficult to heal. After understanding the origin of the space crack, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, before I ascended in my previous life, the world of five elements was peaceful and peaceful. There weren't so many strange things. But now, strange things kept happening. First, the phantom spirit world was destroyed, and the star core crashed into the five elements world, forming a space crack. Now, another divine battleship had crashed, and its wreckage had also pierced into the five elements world, creating a spatial crack. A great world was destroyed, and then a divine ship crashed. Perhaps it was a coincidence that something strange happened. But for strange things to happen one after another, that was too abnormal. So many things had happened in 1,000 years. It seems like disputes have arisen in the universe, and the myriad worlds are not at peace. Ji Tianqing sighed and recalled that he had seen the phantom spirit star core and the divine battleship with his own eyes. On the surface of the world of five elements, there might still be many wreckages. It was just that he had not seen them yet. Although the world of five elements is big, it's an ordinary star in the universe. The probability of various star cores and divine battleship wreckages falling into the void and crashing into the world of five elements is very small. From this, it can be seen that these strange things and battles happened not far from the world of five elements. Moreover, the scale of the battle must not be small. Ordinary powerhouses would only feel surprised and incredulous when they saw the appearance of the divine battleship wreckage. But Ji Tianqing was different. He was once a divine king whose might shook the heavens. He traversed the galaxy and was experienced and knowledgeable. From these two small matters, he could deduce many clues. In the depths of his soul, a trace of uneasiness also faintly emerged. He had an ominous premonition. Perhaps, not long after, the world of five elements would also face a disaster. Just as he was thinking to himself, Yun Yao's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Tianqing, come over and see. Ji Tianqing came back to his senses and looked up at Yun Yao. He saw that she was standing at the bow of the divine battleship wreckage 5 miles away. The bow of the divine battleship had long been twisted. But he could still see that the bow of the divine battleship was in the shape of a shuttle. It was like a sharp thorn that pierced deeply into the world of five elements. The endless black sand in the Ghost Desert poured down from the spatial rift and poured into the bow of the divine battleship. But the strange thing was that the sharp and narrow bow of the divine battleship clearly could not hold much, but it seemed to never be full. No matter how much black sand poured in, it was never full or overflowed. Yun Yao and Luo Li were standing at the bow of the divine battleship, staring at the endless black sand pouring down like a flood and pouring into the bow of the divine battleship. The two of them looked carefully and clicked their tongues in wonder. They became more and more curious about the divine battleship wreckage. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and came beside the two of them. He looked at the black sand and the bow of the divine battleship. After observing for a while, he asked, Yao Yao, are you sure that the divine pearl is here? Yun Yao quickly nodded and said with certainty, it's so close. My senses will not be wrong. It's under our feet, about 1,000 feet deep. 1,000 feet deep? Ji Tianqing frowned and pointed at the divine battleship wreckage under his feet. He said with a troubled expression, "It's such a solid lump of metal. How can we dig 1,000 feet deep?" Luo Li glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "What's so difficult about that? It's just the wreckage of a magic treasure. Once I cut it open, I can smoothly take out the divine pearl." As she spoke, a cold light shone in her palms, and 2 ice crystal short swords appeared. This pair of ice crystal short swords was called Still Water. It was a top-grade sacred artifact that martial god Luo Shui had personally refined and given to Luo Li. It was no exaggeration to say that this pair of short swords was already a top-grade magic treasure weapon on the continent, second only to a divine artifact. Luo Li held the still water swords with both hands and channeled her energy with a solemn expression. She released a vast amount of energy and slowly stabbed at the divine battleship wreckage under her feet. 2 palm-wide, 10-meter-long icy sword lights emitted an incomparably sharp aura as they pierced towards the bronze metal. Yun Yao stared at her movements, her eyes full of anticipation. Ji Tianqing watched coldly from the side, waiting to see Luo Li suffer. In the next moment, 2 crisp sounds of metal clashing rang out, shaking the entire divine battleship wreckage. Clang! Clang! The icy sword lights that Luo Li had unleashed shattered inch by inch, turning into fragments that scattered in the void. On the other hand, the bronze metal was not damaged at all, not even leaving a mark. Such a scene caused Yun Yao to frown and reveal a look of confusion. Luo Li was also stunned, and her expression was a little awkward. However, she was very unwilling to give up. She waved her swords with all her might and stabbed at the divine battleship wreckage under her feet. Chapter 2034. The still water swords shone with a cold light as they pierced toward the bronze metal with an unstoppable force. However, there were 2 crisp clangs that shook the void. The entire wreckage of the divine warship shook uncontrollably. The 2 sword lights collapsed with a loud bang, shattering into pieces of cold light that scattered in the void. Luo Li was angry and wanted to cut open the divine warship wreckage, so she used a secret technique and unleashed 120% of her power. However, the divine warship wreckage was still unscathed and did not even leave a mark. Instead, the horrifying recoil passed through the still water swords and into her body, causing her to retreat a dozen steps before she could regain her footing. Her face was as white as paper, and her chest rose and fell rapidly. It took her a lot of effort to suppress the chaotic magic power. However, a thick sense of shame and embarrassment filled her heart, causing her expression to be unsightly and unable to get off the stage. After a moment of silence, she suppressed the embarrassment in her heart. When she looked up, she saw Ji Tianqing looking at her with a faint smile. Luo Li's heart trembled as she glared at him and shouted coldly, "What are you looking at? I didn't expect this artifact wreckage to be so tough, so I slipped up. This artifact wreckage must be a divine artifact for it to be so indestructible. My still water swords are only divine artifacts, so of course they can't cut it open." Divine artifact? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Yun Yao with a smile. "Yao Yao, didn't Divine Master Luo Shui give you a reverse water sword? Lend it to Luo Li and let her try again." Yun Yao naturally agreed and quickly took out the reverse water sword and handed it to Luo Li. Luo Li took the reverse water sword and glared at Ji Tianqing. Then, she held the sword with both hands and used her energy to slash at the divine warship wreckage. With her previous experience, she was extra cautious this time. She had to unleash 100% of her power and leave a backup plan to avoid being injured by the recoil. Whoosh! The reverse water sword shone with an icy blue sword light and released the power of a divine sword as it slashed at the ancient bronze metal. Clang! A sharp, ear-piercing, and long metallic sound exploded in the void. The wreckage of the divine warship trembled violently for a few dozen times before it finally calmed down. Even though Luo Li was prepared for it, she was still forced back 3 steps by that terrifying power. However, the ancient bronze medal was still in perfect condition, without even a crack. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that there was a shallow white mark on the surface of the medal. Such an outcome caused Luo Li to be dumbfounded, and her entire being was stunned. How? How is this possible? Even the divine sword that the divine master had personally refined was unable to unravel the remains of this magic treasure. It was too unbelievable. Could it be that the quality of this artifact's remains surpasses that of a divine artifact? In Luo Li's heart, the strongest person on the Xinwu continent was the Luo Shui martial god. The most powerful magical treasures and weapons were naturally divine artifacts refined by divine masters. However, the scene before her eyes was too great a blow and shock to her. It overturned her understanding. Even the broken remains of a magic treasure were so tough that even the divine sword could not harm it. If this magic treasure was complete, how powerful would it be? When she thought of this, Luo Li suddenly raised her head and looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. She shouted, "Ji Tianqing! You already knew that there was something wrong with this artifact's remains, didn't you?" Ji Tianqing did not deny it and nodded. Luo Li became even angrier and said with a sullen expression, "Then why didn't you tell me earlier? Why did you have to watch me make a fool of myself?" Ji Tianqing looked at her innocently and spread out his hands. "But you didn't ask me. You." Luo Li was so angry that her eyes widened. She wished she could beat him up. When Yun Yao saw that the two of them were about to quarrel again, she hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Luo Li, don't be angry with Tianqing. Let's get down to business first. This artifact's remains came from beyond the heavens, so it must be extraordinary. It's not strange for its quality to surpass that of a divine artifact. We have to think of a way now. How can we take the god bead out of the artifact's remains?" Luo Li's face showed that she was in a difficult position. She shook her head and said, "Yao Yao, you also saw that neither my still water sacred sword nor your reverse water divine sword could cut open the artifact's remains." Halfway through her words, she glanced at Ji Tianqing and said unhappily, "Anyway, I don't have a way. Your husband is so smart and has extraordinary means. He definitely won't let you down." Although she said this, she seemed to be very confident in Ji Tianqing. However, her eyes and tone carried a bit of ridicule. It was obvious that she wanted to see Ji Tianqing make a fool of himself. "If I, Luo Li, can't do it, then Ji Tianqing, you can do it if you have the ability. When you can't do it and make a fool of yourself in front of everyone, see how I'll retaliate and laugh at you." Luo Li thought to herself. She was actually a bit proud and expectant. Yin Yao's expression was still calm. However, the light of hope in her bright eyes gradually dimmed. She turned around and looked at Ji Tianqing. She asked in a gentle voice, "Tianqing, you seem to know a lot about the artifact's remains. Do you have a way?" She was obviously unwilling to give up and still had a trace of hope. After all, the god bead was too important to her. Ji Tianqing obviously understood her feelings. He stretched out his hands to support her shoulders and comforted her with a gentle smile, "Yao Yao, don't worry. Not to mention the god bead hidden in the remains of the divine battleship, even if you want the stars in the sky, I'll pluck them for you." Hearing this, Yun Yao's dim eyes immediately brightened up and surged with a strong sense of hope. "Tianqing, I believe in you. I've long known that there's nothing in this world that can stop you." Standing to the side, Luo Li couldn't help curling her lips as she looked at the couple's loving and sweet posture. She muttered, "Some people only know how to use flowery words to coax women, but they don't seem to have any real ability. You're bragging, but when the time comes and you can't do it, don't find excuses." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao heard her clearly. However, they just smiled at each other and ignored her. Yun Yao and Luo Li were good friends. She knew that Luo Li was holding back her anger, which was why she was so eccentric. Moreover, Yun Yao was a generous person, so she didn't argue with Luo Li. Ji Tianqing ignored her. It wasn't that he was magnanimous, but that he didn't want to refute her. After a while, Ji Tianqing let go of Yun Yao and said seriously, "All right, Yao Yao, time is running out. Let's not waste any more time. I'll take out the god bead for you now, but I need your help." Yun Yao didn't doubt him at all. She quickly nodded and said, "Okay." After that, Ji Tianqing pulled her to the edge of the ship's bow and explained patiently, "As you can see, this magical treasure has been destroyed and turned into a solid iron lump. I don't know why the god bead was hidden in the remains. However, I'm sure that the endless black sand in the ghost desert must have been swallowed by the god bead after it was poured into the remains of the magical treasure. We can't break open the remains of the magical treasure by force. I can only use the metal dividing technique to open a passage for the god bead." Chapter 2035. The Art of Dividing Metal and Transforming God. Why have I never heard of such a technique? Yun Yao and Luo Li both looked at Ji Tianqing in confusion. Ji Tianqing did not explain. He nodded slightly and said, "There's no time to lose. Yao Yao, let's begin." After saying that, he sat cross-legged on the bronze medal, closed his eyes, and began to cast the technique. His face was solemn. He made strange gestures with both hands and used all his strength to cast the secret technique. He released the bright light of the stars and poured it into the bow of the ship. The dazzling light of the stars contained a mysterious power. After entering the bronze metal, it trembled at a high frequency. The light of the stars seemed to have turned into thousands of silver lines. It broke down the incomparably tough divine metal and opened up a passage as thick as a bowl. Under Ji Tianqing's control, the silver light of the stars continued to extend downward. The passage as thick as a bowl also gradually extended toward the depths of the bow of the ship, approaching the divine pearl bit by bit. In the void, one could not feel the passage of time. It was unknown how much time had passed. Perhaps it was a day, perhaps it was 2 days. Ji Tianqing continued to cast the technique without stopping. His mental energy was greatly depleted. His face was pale, and beads of sweat seeped out of his body. His spirit was somewhat dispirited, and he was extremely tired. After all, he only had the strength of the tribulation realm, but he had to use the power of the stars to forcibly cast the divine technique. This was only an ordinary divine technique and did not have much lethality. But he had already created a miracle. No matter how talented or monstrous he was, he could not hold on for a long time. Fortunately, the passage as thick as the mouth of a bowl had already extended nearly 300 meters. It was very close to the divine pearl. This was already his limit. If he wanted to dig any deeper, he would not be able to do it at all. Yun Yao and Luo Li saw this scene clearly. Of course, they were shocked and full of horror. Both of them found it hard to believe that Ji Tianqing had opened up a passage in the mysterious metal that even the reverse water divine sword could not break. What kind of amazing technique was this? Perhaps only a martial god could do this. Yun Yao was naturally overjoyed and proud of Ji Tianqing. On the other hand, Luo Li's expression was extremely complicated. She was both shocked and ashamed in her heart. But more than that, they were curious about Ji Tianqing. She really couldn't understand what kind of background Ji Tianqing had. What kind of identity and methods did he have to create miracles time and time again? At the same time, Ji Tianqing sent a voice transmission to Yun Yao, who was next to him. "Yao Yao, quickly communicate with the divine pearl and move it into the tunnel." Yun Yao had been waiting for a long time and was fully prepared. Hearing Ji Tianqing's voice transmission, she quickly closed her eyes and released her spiritual consciousness into the passage. Her soul consciousness followed the 100 deep tunnel and entered the depths of the ship without any hindrance. When his divine sense reached the bottom of the tunnel, it was only 3 meters away from the divine pearl. However, it was this thick piece of divine metal that stood in the middle that made her feel pressured and difficult. The material of the divine metal was special. Not only was it abnormally strong, it could also block magic power and isolate divine sense. Fortunately, her divine sense and the divine pearl could be said to be very close. She could clearly feel that every trace of the divine pearl's aura was as if it was alive and breathing. She was anxious and worried, but she forced herself to calm down. She focused her will to control her divine sense and merge it with the divine pearl's aura. A quarter of an hour, half an hour. Soon, an hour had passed. Yun Yao's divine sense finally communicated with the divine pearl successfully. They breathed together and shared a destiny. She was pleasantly surprised and excited. She quickly used her divine sense to guide the divine pearl to move forward slowly. It was a dark golden divine pearl. It was only the size of an egg and shone with a dazzling golden light. Its material was special. It could merge with the divine metal without any hindrance. It moved through the divine metal like a small fish swimming in the water. Yun Yao's divine sense was the thread that guided the small fish. The dark golden divine pearl moved bit by bit and got closer and closer to the tunnel. Ji Tianqing waited patiently. He gritted his teeth and held on tenaciously. Finally, Yun Yao controlled the divine pearl to pass through the thick divine metal and enter the tunnel. Without the obstruction of the divine metal, she immediately felt the pressure decrease greatly. Her connection with the divine pearl also became closer. Under the control of her mind, the divine pearl blossomed with a dazzling golden light and flew up along the bull-sized passage. At the same time, Ji Tianqing also gradually retracted the starlight. The 1,000 feet deep tunnel also began to close quickly from the bottom. Swoosh! After 100 breaths, the divine pearl passed through the 1,000 feet deep tunnel and flew out of the divine metal. Yun Yao waved her sleeves and grabbed the divine pearl with her slender hand. She held it in her palm. Immediately after, Ji Tianqing also stopped casting and withdrew his magic power. The 1,000 feet deep tunnel disappeared and returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. His mind relaxed, and he let out a sigh of relief. He hurriedly took out a pill and consumed it. He circulated his energy and refined the pill to replenish his magic power and mental energy. Luo Li took 2 steps forward and came to Yun Yao's side. She stared at the divine pearl in her palm and revealed a look of surprise. "This is great. Yao Yao, you finally got this divine pearl." Yun Yao held the divine pearl in her palm and was also filled with joy and excitement. She nodded and said sincerely, "Yes." Fortunately, Tianqing was here. He thought of this method and helped me get the divine pearl. Otherwise, even if the divine pearl was right in front of me, I would be helpless. Yun Yao spoke from the bottom of her heart and did not think too much about it. However, Luo Li's expression was rather awkward when she heard it. "Yes, yes, yes. Your Ji Tianqing is the most capable and powerful." Yun Yao turned her head to look at Luo Li and revealed a helpless bitter smile. She sent a sound transmission to Luo Li and asked, "Luo Li, you've always had a cold personality and you rarely get angry with others. Why are you at odds with Tianqing? You are the Divine Master's divine official. You are a magnanimous person. Don't get angry with Tianqing, okay?" Luo Li curled her lips and said unhappily, "It's not that I want to get angry with him, but he is really hateful. I get angry just by looking at him." Yun Yao was even more helpless. She smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that the two of you are born to be incompatible." Then, she stopped talking about this topic. After carefully putting away the divine pearl, she looked at the tip of the ship's bow. She saw endless black sand pouring down from the black hole and pouring onto the ship's bow. Previously, the divine pearl was hidden in the wreckage of the divine ship. No matter how much black sand poured down, it would disappear without a trace. However, now that the black sand poured into the bow, it quickly overflowed and scattered into the void. Seeing this, Yunyao's eyes were filled with surprise. She said in a solemn tone, Tianqing was right. The black sand was indeed swallowed by the divine pearl. This fourth divine pearl can not only merge with metal, but it can also swallow sand and convert it into divine power. Chapter 2036. This dark gold god pearl was the fourth god pearl that Yunyao had obtained. The first three were blue sea, star, and longevity. This one was called earth spirit. Without a doubt, after she refined the earth spirit god pearl, she would be able to control the power of the earth. However, this place was in the void, which was not suitable for cultivation. She could only keep the earth spirit god pearl and refine it after she returned to the Luotian mountain. After about 2 days, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation. His magic power and mental energy had recovered, and his strength had reached its peak. Seeing him get up, Luo Li said expressionlessly, "The void is dangerous. Since we have obtained the god pearl and your magic power has recovered, we should leave." Ji Tianqing looked at her with a smile that was not a smile, and said in a playful tone, "What? Divine official Luo predicted that I would not be able to do it, but I was lucky enough to do it. Divine official Luo, don't you have anything to say to me?" Luo Li frowned and stared at him unhappily. "What do you want me to say?" Ji Tianqing pretended to think about it seriously, and said in a serious tone, "I have created an unimaginable miracle. You must be very shocked in your heart, and also admire me. However, you have a cold and arrogant personality, and you are not willing to admit defeat easily. It is impossible for you to show your admiration, so you can only hide it in your heart. I can understand your feelings and difficulties, and I will not force you to show your feelings. As long as you say, 'Young Master Ji, I am sorry,' I will forgive you for your previous rudeness. How about it? Am I being very lenient with you?" Luo Li was dumbfounded, and stared at him in disbelief. Her face was covered with frost, and her anger was getting stronger. She never thought that Ji Tianqing would dare to say such words. After being stunned for a moment, she came back to her senses and angrily scolded, "Ji Tianqing, I have never seen such a shameless person like you. Who is shocked? Who admires you? Who admires you? You narcissistic, arrogant bastard. Even if I admire a pig or a donkey, I will never admire you. You want me to apologize to you? Dream on." Luo Li was so angry that she almost went mad. Her status was so noble that for hundreds of years, no one had ever dared to act rashly in front of her. However, Ji Tianqing was completely unrestrained, which really opened her eyes. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. In his fury, his words became much more vicious and he did not choose his words carefully. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He looked at her with a smile and said with a face full of surprise, "No. Miss Luo Li, a dignified divine official, actually admired pigs and donkeys? TSK, TSK, TSK. Divine official Luo, your taste is really unique." Ji Tianqing. Luo Li furrowed her brows in anger as she glared at Ji Tianqing. Pointing her finger at him, she shouted, You're shameless." No matter how angry and furious she was, even if she was trembling with anger, she was powerless to refute. After all, she did have the intention of laughing at Ji Tianqing. However, she did not expect that Ji Tianqing would create a miracle and really take out the divine pearl. Now that she was being ridiculed by Ji Tianqing, she could only endure it. Seeing that Luo Li was angry, Yunyao could only persuade Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, stop talking and let Luo Li win." Ji Tianqing smiled at her and nodded. Yunyao walked to Luo Li's side and pulled her arm. She comforted, "Luo Li, I believe that Tianqing didn't do it on purpose. Both of you should take a step back and stop being so angry, okay?" Luo Li suppressed her anger with great difficulty and glared at Ji Tianqing. She said in a low voice, "I don't want to see him." Yun Yao smiled bitterly and could only persuade, okay, we'll do as you say. Our mission has been completed and we will leave soon. After we leave the northern underworld mountain, I'll let him go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains first. We'll go back to the Luotian mountain. Luo Li shook her head without hesitation and said, I don't want to see him for even a second. Let's go now. After we return to the Ghost Desert, we'll go our separate ways. He'll go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains alone and I'll escort you back to the Luotian mountain. Yun Yao naturally disagreed. She frowned and said, the northern underworld mountain is very dangerous. The great demon saint is leading a large group of experts to hunt him down. How can we let Tianqing go alone? It's too dangerous. Luo Li also knew that this was a little inappropriate and hesitated. However, she was still angry. How could she give in? Isn't he very capable and has created miracles time and time again? It's just the northern underworld mountain and the great demon saint. What's there to be afraid of? Sigh. Yun Yao could only sigh helplessly. Ji Tianqing glanced at Luo Li and thought to himself, women really can't be offended. Once they're angry, they're unreasonable. Seeing that Yun Yao was still comforting Luo Li, he was too lazy to interrupt. He turned around and looked at the wreckage of the divine battleship. Although this divine battleship has crashed into wreckage, it still has 5 kilometers of divine gold left. This is the best material for forging and upgrading divine weapons. It can only be found in the realm of the gods. I have to think of a way to get this wreckage of the divine battleship. In the future, if the Sword of Burial of Heaven wants to be upgraded to a divine weapon, it will definitely be useful. With this thought in mind, he released his divine sense to cover the entire wreckage and carefully observed it. The wreckage of the divine battleship was cold and dead. It was silently inserted into the 5 elements world. Other than Ji Tianqing and the other 2, there was no other living thing in the wreckage of the divine battleship. There wasn't even a wisp of remnant soul. Moreover, all traces of the divine battleship had disappeared. Now, the wreckage of the divine battleship was really a messy pile of divine gold. This pile of divine gold is 5 kilometers long and weighs more than 100 million pounds. If I use my divine sense, I should be able to move it. Ji Tianqing made up his mind and cast a few golden palms to hug the wreckage of the divine battleship. He gritted his teeth and exerted all his strength, trying to pull the wreckage of the divine battleship out. However, the wreckage of the divine battleship was inserted into the 5 elements world. It was firmly stuck in the spatial barrier and could not move at all. Ji Tianqing was unwilling to give up. He repeatedly tried more than 10 times, but he could not move the wreckage of the divine battleship. He could not pull it out at all. Damn it! I can't pull it out, nor can I refine it. Could it be that I can only look on helplessly and do nothing about it? Ji Tianqing frowned and pondered about a solution. However, at this moment, a blood-red dot of light lit up in the void hundreds of kilometers away. That blood-red dot of light was like a shooting star that cut through the void. It was as fast as the aurora. Yun Yao and Luo Li both sensed that something was wrong. They frowned and looked at that blood-red dot of light with vigilance. What's that? It seems like there's a strong fighter approaching and coming straight for us. I can sense a strong demonic aura. Oh no, it's a strong fighter from the demon clan. Both of them sensed that the situation was not good. Their expressions became sinister, and they became cautious and vigilant. Luo Li also suppressed her anger. She stared at that dot of light, and a trace of fighting spirit surged in her eyes. In the blink of an eye, that blood-red dot of light came close and landed on the wreckage of the divine battleship. Swoosh! A blood-red light flashed, and 2 tall and burly figures appeared on the bronze wreckage of the divine battleship. They were 2 strong fighters from the demon clan with a strong demonic aura. Chapter 2037. Ji Tianqing, I've finally met you. The leader of the demon race was wearing a long robe that was as red as fire. There were pictures of white bones and demons embroidered on it. There was also a pair of mysterious ghost claws embroidered on his collar and chest. This person was more than 10 feet tall. He was burly and muscular. His hands that were exposed outside of his robe were a pair of black and cold sharp claws. His 5 sharp claws were long and sharp. There were also fine dragon scales on the surface of his skin that were emitting a black cold light. On his round head, there was a pair of big eyes. His pupils were blue in color and were flickering with blue flames. He had an arrogant posture and a majestic aura. He was emitting a domineering aura that looked down on the world and an unparalleled killing intent. He glared at Ji Tianqing with his big eyes. His cold and majestic voice contained unconcealable joy and excitement. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li immediately concluded. This demon dragon must be the most powerful person in the North Underworld Mountain and the leader of the 4 great demon saints. In comparison, the white-haired elder behind the great demon saint, who was wearing a purple robe, had 4 wings and 6 arms. He was much weaker in terms of aura. However, when Ji Tianqing saw the white-haired elder's face clearly, he frowned and his pupils contracted. Patriarch Xuepao. Obviously, the skinny and ferocious-looking white-haired elder was the 4th great demon saint, Patriarch Xuepao. Back in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Ji Tianqing and the Huanglong Daoist had joined forces to severely injure Patriarch Xuepao on the night that the Shihe sect was attacked. Patriarch Xuepao's physical body was destroyed and only his severely injured divine soul was left. He had fled in panic. Ji Tianqing was sure that if Patriarch Xuepao wanted to go into seclusion to heal his injuries, he would need at least a few decades or even a few centuries to recover. However, he knew the Ancestor Fiend Celestial's nature and knew that the Ancestor Fiend Celestial would not wait for such a long time. He would definitely use some kind of secret technique to help Patriarch Xuepao recover his strength as soon as possible. But now, Patriarch Xuepao appeared in the void. His body was intact and his strength had not decreased. The difference was that Patriarch Xuepao's body had changed. His body was as red as fire. He had 4 wings and 6 arms and his purple hair had turned white. Upon seeing this, Ji Tianqing was certain that he had guessed correctly. The Ancestor Fiend Celestial must have used a secret technique to restore Patriarch Xuepao in the shortest period of time. However, there must have been severe consequences and severe consequences. Sure enough, Ancestor Xuepao stared at Ji Tianqing with a malicious gaze and grinned coldly. Ji Tianqing. We met again. Ha ha ha. You definitely didn't expect this, did you? This old man has actually recovered his strength in such a short period of time. Patriarch Xuepao's voice was low and hoarse. His tone was cold and filled with hatred. Not long ago, this old man received the news that you had barged into the North Underworld Mountain, and the great devil saint wanted to kill you personally. Such a heaven-sent opportunity, how could this old man miss it? Let's see how. Of you. Today, even if a god descends, he will not be able to save you. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said in a mocking tone, You recovered your strength so quickly. The ancestral devil god must have helped you. If I'm not wrong, the Ancestor Fiend Celestial must have used a secret technique to refine you into a magic treasure of the Devil Dao. Ha ha ha. To be refined into a magic treasure, you must have suffered inhumane pain and torture, right? Patriarch Xuepao was exposed and poked at his sore spot. He recalled the pain and torture he had endured, and the Ancestor Fiend Celestial threw him into the abyss of the Blood Sea and refined him into a magic treasure. For half a year, his soul had been tortured hundreds of thousands of times. He was constantly crushed, distorted, and then restored to his original form. That was the most painful experience in his life. It was also a memory that he did not want to talk about. It was too painful. It was too terrifying. Now that Ji Tianqing was mocking him, Patriarch Shuepao was enraged. He roared hysterically. Ji Tianqing! You despicable beast, reptile! The pain and torture that I had to endure was all because of you. Originally, I could have gone into seclusion to recuperate for 100 years. After recovering my strength, I would have sought revenge on you. However, I could not wait that long. I would not give you the chance to grow. I gave up the possibility of increasing my realm. I could not break through in my lifetime, just to kill you as soon as possible. Today, if I don't tear you into pieces and burn you into ashes, how can I get rid of the hatred in my heart? I will let you have a taste of the pain of having your body and soul crushed 1,000,000 times. Patriarch Shuepao was furious. It went to his head and made him crazy. After roaring, he was about to charge towards Ji Tianqing and tear Ji Tianqing into pieces. However, the great demon sage, who was standing in front of him, stretched out his hand and stopped him. The great demon sage looked coldly at Yun Yao and Luo Li. He sneered proudly and said, I came to the ghost desert to kill Ji Tianqing. I did not expect that the heavens would bless me and give me such a big gift. One is the number one god's disciple of the Luo Shui kingdom, the future goddess. The other is the personal mate of the Luo Shui martial god, the most trusted divine official. He. After I kill Ji Tianqing, I will take you back to the demon palace and make you my concubines. By then, the reaction of the Luo Shui martial god and the people of the god's kingdom will be very interesting, right? After saying that, the great demon sage sneered. His tone was very evil. Patriarch Shuepao was also very proud. He sneered contemptuously and said, Great demon sage, these two lowly human slaves are so ugly. For them to be able to become your concubines and receive your favor, that is the fortune of their 8 lifetimes. Ha ha ha. The great demon sage laughed wildly and nodded. That's right. That's right. I am also making such a sacrifice for the great cause of my people. Luo Li and Yun Yao were so angry that their faces were pale. Their eyes were filled with shame and anger. Especially Luo Li, she was so angry that her body was trembling. Flames of killing intent surged out from behind her. Great demon sage! I have long heard of your fierce reputation and that you are the number one expert of the North Underworld Mountain. Luo Li is not talented, but as the great divine official under the divine master, I have long wanted to kill you and make a name for myself. Today, you have chased me into the void, so I have to thank you. Thank you for coming to die and giving me a chance to make a name for myself. Luo Li's tone was cold. Her eyes were cold, and her body was emitting an invisible heroic aura. Her chest was burning with a burning desire to fight. Her hands glowed, and 2 ice crystal daggers appeared in her hands. Great demon sage, I, Luo Li, will take your life. Luo Li shouted. Without hesitation, she held the still water dual swords and rushed toward the great demon sage. 2 crescent-shaped sword lights were released. Moon Star Water. The 2 crescent-shaped sword lights were more than 10 miles long. They were as dazzling as the moon in the sky, illuminating hundreds of miles of the void. Chapter 2038. Luo Li had long wanted to compete with the great demon saint. Now that she had made her move, she naturally used all of her strength. The 2 crescent-shaped sword lights locked onto the great demon saint's consciousness and aura, and attacked him from both sides, leaving him with nowhere to hide. Even if he tried to teleport away, it would be useless. The sword lights would cut through the void and chase after the great demon saint. Of course, the great demon saint was arrogant and did not bother to dodge. You want to take my life with such little tricks? You are too naive. The great demon saint sneered and immediately raised his hands, clenched his fists, and punched at the 2 sword lights. From his palms, a cold and deathly blue brilliance surged out and condensed into 2 huge black dragon claws, slapping at the 2 sword lights. Kaboom! The deafening sound of the collision exploded in the void. A violent force burst out, shaking the surrounding hundreds of miles. Even the wreckage of the divine battleship trembled and shook. The sword lights and the black dragon claws collapsed at the same time, turning into streams of light and scattering in the void. Luoli waved the short sword in her hands, and sword lights filled the sky once again, attacking the great demon saint. The great demon saint did not retreat, and with his black dragon claws, he released a monstrous demonic shadow and fought with Luoli. The two martial saints fought fiercely in the sky. Light and shadow flew in all directions, and layers of shock waves were generated. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ancestor Shui Pao roared and turned into a bloody light, pouncing toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, you bastard, give me your life. Ancestor Shui Pao roared and flapped his four wings, waving his 6 arms, and releasing bloody light blades that covered the sky. Ji Tianqing was immediately enveloped by the bloody light blades, and had to bear the attack of thousands of bloody light blades. However, he was not afraid, and with a flash of brilliance in his right hand, the sword of burial of heaven appeared. 7-star sword. With a thrust of the sword of burial of heaven, 49 giant swords formed a mysterious formation and bloomed in all directions. With a series of muffled bangs, the cold light of the huge sword shattered the blood-red blades that filled the sky, tearing out a huge gap. More than half of the remaining bloody blades were destroyed by Yunyao. The remaining hundreds of sharp blades pierced Ji Tianqing, but they did not have much power, they did not injure him at all. Seeing this, Patriarch Shui Pao's pupils constricted, revealing an extremely shocked expression. Ji Tianqing. Your physical body is actually comparable to a martial saint expert. How is this possible? He remembered clearly that Ji Tianqing had not broken through to the martial sage realm. How could he possess the physical body of a martial sage? While he was still in a daze, Ji Tianqing had already transformed into a streak of light and charged over with sword in hand. Heaven-cleaving sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed out a 1,000-foot-long golden sword toward Patriarch Shui Pao. The sword light was dazzling and extraordinarily powerful. Even the void was rippling. Patriarch Shui Pao did not dare to be careless. He quickly suppressed his shock and focused on his opponent. With a swoosh, he folded his 4 wings and released a blood-red light that shot up to the sky to protect himself. Blood Sea, 10,000 slaves protect master. The surging blood-red light was like a 1,000-foot-wide shield that protected Patriarch Shui Pao. The blood-red light surged like waves of blood. There were even tens of thousands of demonic shadows that bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Boom! The huge golden sword struck the blood-red light and a deafening explosion erupted. Although a crack was formed in the blood-red light, countless blood-red flames spurted out. However, the huge golden sword sank into the blood sea and was quickly corroded, completely disappearing. Patriarch Shui Pao had successfully neutralized Ji Tianqing's attack and was not injured. Only then did he feel relieved. He. I thought you had broken through to the martial sage realm. I did not expect it to be like this. So what if your defense is comparable to a martial sage's? Your secret skill will not be able to do anything to me. Patriarch Shui Pao laughed proudly and waved his 6 arms again. He released a blood-red light that covered the sky and poured it down on Ji Tianqing. Endless blood sea. The blood-red light that covered the sky was like a flood that sealed off the sky and poured down on Ji Tianqing's body. In an instant, the area within a 200-mile radius turned into a blood sea. The waves in the blood sea surged up to the sky. The demonic shadows overlapped and attacked Ji Tianqing crazily. The blood sea had the power to corrode one's physical body and spiritual soul. It formed hundreds of spells and continuously attacked Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was trapped in the blood sea and had to bear the full force of Patriarch Shui Pao's attack. It would be difficult for him to escape in a short period of time. Moreover, he had to use his mana shield to resist the corrosion of the Blood Sea. The shield was constantly broken and repaired, draining his mana rapidly. If this dragged on for too long, his mana would be depleted. Then, his combat ability would weaken rapidly and he would be no match for Patriarch Xue Pao. Fortunately, Yin Yao relied on the protection of the Reverse Water Divine Sword. Not only did she resist the corrosion of the Blood Sea, but she also rushed to Ji Tianqing's vicinity. "Tianqing, don't panic. I'll help you." Yin Yao's expression was cold as she shouted in a low voice. She flew to Ji Tianqing's side and held the Reverse Water Divine Sword with both hands. She slashed down with all her might. Sword bestowed by God, repel water and repel demons. The icy blue Reverse Water Divine Sword released a terrifying divine power. It formed a 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword light and slashed at the raging Blood Sea. The sword light was like a bright moon that cut through the night sky and illuminated the world. It was like a thunderbolt that tore through the night and dispelled all darkness. Its power was like the wrath of a god. Its power was boundless. Boom! The sword light slashed at the Blood Sea, creating a loud sound that shook the universe. It spread thousands of miles in the void. The surging evil sea of blood was actually split into two by the sword light, creating an abyss in the middle. The Blood Sea was broken. Endless blood light scattered in the void and quickly dissipated. The sword light moved forward with indomitable will. It slashed for hundreds of miles before stopping. The Blood Sea that Patriarch Xue Pao had condensed with all his strength was split in half by Yun Yao's sword. It fell into the void in pieces. Swoosh! The Blood Sea was broken. Patriarch Xue Pao also suffered a heavy blow and was sent flying in a sorry state. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was shocked and excited. "This is incredible. Yao Yao, this divine sword is so powerful that you can send Patriarch Xue Pao flying with just one slash." Yun Yao's face was pale. She held the Reverse Water Divine Sword with both hands and panted violently. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, she nodded and said while panting, "Yes, the sword that the Divine Master made himself and carries with him everywhere. Its power is naturally extraordinary. Especially since I have mastered the art of controlling the Divine Sword these few years. That's why I can use 30% of the Divine Sword's power and use this ultimate technique. However, with my current strength, I can only use it 3 times at most before I'm exhausted." Only then did Ji Tianqing understand the reason, and his excited mood immediately calmed down. At the same time, Patriarch Xue Pao flew back. He was only slightly injured. It did not affect his battle. His momentum was even more ferocious. "Ha ha ha. UB*TCH, do you think you can kill me with the Reverse Water Divine Sword? What a joke. I spent half a year in the abyss of the Blood Sea. It's already an extreme path demonic weapon." Chapter 2039. Extreme Path Demonic Weapon. Yun Yao frowned, and her serious expression became even more puzzled. Ji Tianqing explained, "Extreme Path Demonic Weapon is one of the secret techniques of the ancient demons. It's extremely vicious and powerful. Using this secret technique can refine demons and demonic beasts into demonic dharma artifacts. They'll be as tough as puppets and won't feel pain. But their souls and consciousness will be preserved. They'll still have the ability to think." In the ancient War of the Gods, the demons refined the severely injured demons and demonic beasts into extreme path demonic weapons in order to preserve their combat power. That's an extremely powerful and terrifying team. Like the Blood God, they're the most terrifying force of the demons. Yun Yao roughly understood what he meant. She became even more cautious when dealing with Patriarch Xue Pao. Moonlight Cascade. She charged at Patriarch Xue Pao again. She waved the Reverse Water Divine Sword and slashed out a 10-mile-wide white sword light. The sword light was as bright as the moon. It slashed at Patriarch Shui Pao like a cascade that covered the sky. Patriarch Shui Pao said arrogantly. But in reality, he didn't dare to underestimate the power of the reverse water divine sword. He could only fight back with all his might. Ji Tianqing took this opportunity to attack with his sword. He joined forces with Yunyao. Sky-splitting sword. The sword light was as bright as the sun. It cut through the dark and cold void and slashed at Patriarch Shui Pao. Bam, bam, bam. A series of muffled sounds resounded in the void. Patriarch Shui Pao used his secret technique to release 4 blood dragons to block Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's attacks. The two sides started fighting in the void. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. As the battle became more and more intense, the three of them left the remains of the divine worship and moved into the void. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao joined forces and fought with Patriarch Shui Pao for thousands of rounds. But they still couldn't kill him. Patriarch Shui Pao was severely injured. He looked terrible. 2 of his 4 blood wings had been chopped off. The remaining 2 were in tatters. 2 of the 6 arms had been shattered, and the remaining 4 were badly mutilated. In addition, his entire body was riddled with wounds, and there were barely any intact pieces of flesh. Dark purple demon blood seeped out of the numerous wounds on his body, turning him into a bloody man. If Patriarch Shui Pao had not been refined into an extreme Dao demonic weapon, his body would have been destroyed long ago. However, things were different now. His physical body had been refined with a secret technique, and his defensive power had increased by several times. Even though he was severely injured, he could still retain 30 to 40% of his combat strength and tenaciously resist Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's siege. As for Ji Tianqing and Yunyao, their injuries were not light either. Their hair was disheveled, their white robes were stained with blood, their faces were ghastly pale, and their breathing was somewhat chaotic. After fighting for 2 hours, the 2 of them had used up 60 to 70% of their magic power. Their battle prowess had also weakened a lot. However, the 2 of them refused to give up before killing Patriarch Shui Pao. 5-colored divine lightning. Meteor fall. The 2 of them gritted their teeth and continued to use their secret techniques to increase the pace of their attacks. Patriarch Shui Pao's power was getting weaker and weaker, and his injuries were getting worse. He was forced to retreat, and it was difficult for him to withstand the attacks. Patriarch Shui Pao was about to lose. He could hold on for another 15 minutes at most, and then he would be killed by the couple. However, at this critical moment, a dark purple flowing light came from not far away. Swoosh! Inside the dark purple flowing light was a demon more than 10 feet tall, wearing a red robe. It was the great demon saint. His clothes were ragged, his hair was messy, and his entire body was covered in blood. His entire left arm was dangling weakly. At first glance, the great demon saint looked like he was in a mess, as if he had been severely injured. However, that was not the case. He was only slightly injured, and his strength was still as powerful as ever. Black Dragon Fist. Like a ghost, he teleported behind Ji Tianqing, raised his right fist and punched towards him. The 2 of them were only 10,000 feet apart. When Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong, it was already too late, and there was no way for him to dodge. Bam! The giant black dragon fist landed on Ji Tianqing, and sent him flying 10 miles away. While he was still in the air, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire back was covered in cracks, and pale golden blood was seeping out of them. Fortunately, his body had been tempered thousands of times, and his defense was extremely strong. That was why he was able to block the great demon saint's punch. Otherwise, the great demonic saint's punch would have turned him into dust on the spot. No. Yunyao saw Ji Tianqing being attacked with her own eyes, and her face was filled with shock. She was extremely worried. Instinctively, she rushed over and tried to save Ji Tianqing. However, the great demon saint had already predicted her reaction. His right fist turned into a claw, and a black light shot out from it. Black Dragon Palm. The black dragon palm shadow that blotted out the sky carried a domineering might that could suppress everything as it struck Yunyao. Although Yunyao saw that things were not going well, she quickly waved her divine sword to block the attack. However, her cultivation level was too low. How could she block the great demon saint's attack? Kaboom! Bam! The sword chi in the sky was smashed into pieces, and Yunyao was also hit by the black dragon palm. Blood spurted out of her 7 orifices. Maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe the great demon saint did it on purpose. After flying for 10 miles, she landed right next to Ji Tianqing. The great demon saint had used a powerful attack to severely injure the two of them. By the time she and Ji Tianqing wiped the blood off their faces and regained their composure, Patriarch Xue Pao had charged over again. Ji Tianqing. It's time for you to die. Patriarch Xue Pao was smug, and he sneered. He held a white bone spear and thrust it at them at lightning speed. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao quickly dodged the attack and cast spells to block Patriarch Xue Pao's attack. At the same time, their hearts sank, and they became more worried. Damn it! Isn't the great demon saint fighting with Luo Li? Why did he suddenly appear? This is not good. Could it be that Luo Li is no match for the great demon saint and has been killed? Ji Tianqing knew that Luo Li was no match for the great demon saint. However, he could not believe that the great demon saint could kill Luo Li. Just as he and Yunyao were retreating, the great demon saint was closing in on them, trying to kill them on the spot. At the critical moment, 2 cold sword chi suddenly flashed and attacked the great demon saint and Patriarch Xue Pao. Swoosh! Swoosh! Cold light flashed, and sword chi swept out. It was Luo Li. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was covered in blood. Her clothes were soaked in blood, and she looked extremely miserable. Her whole body was covered with hideous wounds. There were hundreds of them, and they were so deep that her bones could be seen. It was a miracle that her body had not collapsed after being severely injured to this extent. She waved the still water dual swords with all her strength and stabbed out 2 sword chi to save Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. The great demon saint dodged one of the sword chi. The other sword chi stabbed Patriarch Xue Pao, and a bloody hole appeared in his chest. Demonic blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 2040. Although Luo Li was severely injured, she was at the end of her rope. Although she was no match for the great demon saint, she was still able to defeat Patriarch Xue Pao. After defeating Patriarch Xue Pao, she dashed toward the great demon saint crazily and slashed out dozens of sword rays. Swoosh! Swoosh! 64 giant swords that were thousands of feet long formed an oval-shaped sword array and enveloped the great demon saint. The great demon saint wanted to kill Ji Tianqing, but he could only give up and focus on defending against Luo Li's attacks. While attacking the great demon saint, Luo Li shouted to Ji Tianqing and Yunyao through telepathy, "You too. What are you waiting for? Run away. I'll hold the great demon saint back. Run away. Quick." Her voice was hoarse and low, and her tone was filled with grief and anxiety. At this moment, she was no longer as noble, elegant, cold, and holy as before. It was as if she was a completely different person. In the face of death, she could no longer care about her manners and dignity. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were severely injured, and they were trying to suppress their injuries. Hearing Luo Li's shout, the two of them were stunned and realized the seriousness of the situation. *T. Luo Li can't defeat the great demon saint, and she's severely injured. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked worried. Yunyao's expression turned even uglier. She was extremely worried. On the surface, it looks like she's attacking fiercely, but it's actually a last-ditch effort. She's trying to hold the great demon saint back so that we can have more time to run away. Tianqing, we can't hesitate. We have to run away now. Of course, Ji Tianqing knew that they had already lost this battle. If they continued to fight, they would definitely lose their lives. However, he was unwilling to run away just like that. He turned his head and looked at the void not far away. Patriarch Xue Pao was covered in blood, and there was a huge hole in his chest that was still bleeding. He could not feel any pain, and he was trying to suppress his injuries. He quickly gathered a ball of bloody light and covered his body. "Yao Yao, give me some time," Ji Tianqing said in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, he forced his heavily injured body to rush toward Patriarch Xue Pao like a bolt of lightning. Shua! In the blink of an eye, he had crossed 30 miles and arrived in front of Patriarch Xue Pao. Patriarch Xue Pao immediately woke up and raised his head to look at Ji Tianqing. Fear flashed in his eyes as he shouted, "What do you want to do, Ji Tianqing? Luoli has already been defeated, and you guys are about to die at the hands of the great demon saint. Do you still want to put up a desperate struggle?" Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time talking nonsense with him. He directly raised his right hand and fiercely slapped out. God-slaying spear. Boundless golden divine flames gushed out of his palm and formed a divine spear, thrusting toward Patriarch Xue Pao. The divine spear was 30 meters long, and it was burning with fierce golden flames, releasing an extremely terrifying aura. Patriarch Xue Pao's spiritual soul had been locked down. Being in the empty void, there was no way for him to escape. Feeling the terrifying power of the god-slaying spear, he felt fear from the bottom of his soul. His eyes widened in shock. "No!" Patriarch Xue Pao roared in horror. He instinctively raised his arms and spread out 2 tattered wings to protect his vital parts. He still didn't want to give up, and he desperately teleported 10 miles away. However, the god-slaying spear was so fast that it instantly pierced through 10 miles of the void and hit him. Boom! A deafening sound burst out, shaking the void and spreading for thousands of miles. A dazzling golden flame bloomed in the void like a mushroom cloud. The void within 3,000 miles was lit up by the golden light. Patriarch Xue Pao's body was already covered with wounds and was on the verge of being destroyed. After suffering such a heavy blow, his physical body collapsed on the spot. He was blasted into billions of pieces and scattered in the void. Even his weak spiritual soul was pierced through by the god-slaying spear and shattered into several pieces. The golden divine flames surged and burned the pieces of flesh and spiritual soul into ashes. It was all over. Even though Patriarch Xue Pao had been refined into an extreme path demonic weapon, he couldn't escape the fate of death. In the end, he was still killed by Ji Tianqing. Not even his bones were left behind. Ji Tianqing looked at the golden flames in the sky expressionlessly. After confirming that Patriarch Xue Pao was dead, he turned around and left. Yunyao hurriedly rushed forward to meet him. Despite her heavy injuries, she dragged him towards the wreckage of the divine worship. Dozens of miles away, Luoli was still crazily attacking the great demon saint. She didn't care about her life at all. She was fighting with her life on the line. Even though she wasn't as powerful as the great demon saint, she was still able to stall the great demon saint and prevent him from escaping. 10 breaths later, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao returned to the remains of the divine battleship and stood at the front of the ship. The two of them turned around and looked at Luoli with complicated expressions. Yunyao was worried. She sent a voice transmission to Luoli anxiously, "Luoli, run. Don't fight." Luoli ignored her and continued to attack the great demon saint. At the same time, she replied, "No. I have to stall the great demon saint. Only then will you have a chance to escape. If I also run away, the 3 of us will die here." Yunyao understood the meaning behind her words. She became even more anxious and tried to persuade her, Luoli, don't be stupid. If you don't run away, you will die. If the three of us work together. Before she could finish speaking, Luoli interrupted her. She said in a low and hoarse voice, before we came to the North Underworld Mountain, I said that it is my responsibility to help you find the divine orb. No matter what, I will protect you and let you return to the Luotian Mountain safely. I have made up my mind. You don't have to say anything more. Yun Yao saw that Luoli was determined to die, but she was still so stubborn. Her heart ached, and her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. At this time, Luoli turned around and glanced at Ji Tianqing. She said in a cold and indifferent voice, Ji Tianqing, Yao Yao is the best girl in the world. She is destined to become the god of Luo River in the future. No matter what, please cherish her and protect her. Don't let her be wronged. I know you hate me, but I am not targeting you on purpose. I am doing this for Yao Yao. Go, take Yao Yao and leave. Send her back to the Luotian Mountain safely. From now on, you and I don't owe each other anything. Luo Li's voice was calm and cold, revealing her determination. After she finished speaking, she no longer cared about Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. She rushed toward the great demon sage without any regard for her own safety. Her whole body was covered in blue flames. At this time, she held her head high and her chest out. She had regained her usual cold and arrogant attitude. Her expression was as calm as water. However, her flesh and blood and the soul in her mind were burning fiercely. The blue flames that soared into the sky lit up the void for thousands of miles. It was like a phoenix spreading its wings and soaring in the sky. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's bodies shook. They immediately understood her intentions. Their pupils shrank, and they subconsciously cried out in grief. No. Luo Li. Don't self-destruct. However, Luo Li could no longer hear them. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Soul to Luo River, no more reincarnation. Chapter 2041. Boom. A loud explosion shook the heavens, and endless blue flames lit up the sky. A mass of dazzling and magnificent ice-blue flames blotted out the sky and blotted out the sky. It was like the brightest star in the sky and the most beautiful fireworks in a festival. However, it was formed by Luo Li's soul. No matter how dazzling it was sad and sorrowful, and it made one's heart clench. Even though Ji Tianqing had a strong will, seeing Luo Li explode and die with his own eyes still made him feel sad. Thinking back to the words he had said to anger Luo Li, he felt guilty. The resolute words that Luo Li had said before she blew herself up still lingered in his mind, not dissipating for a long time. Yun Yao's eyes stared at the blue flames in the sky, and her body started to tremble. Her face was as white as a sheet, and 2 drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. Deep sorrow filled her mind and caused her heart to ache. All sorts of memories surfaced in her mind. When she had just arrived at the Luotian Mountain, she was in an unfamiliar environment, and she was sad and lonely. It was Luo Li who came to her side, accompanied her, and helped her. All kinds of scenes, including Luo Li's frown, smile, and words, were still vivid in her mind. But now, they were separated forever, and they would never be able to see each other again. Swoosh! The flames from Luo Li's explosion spread in all directions. The icy blue shockwave had the power to destroy everything, and it swept across a radius of a few thousand miles. Seeing the shockwave, Ji Tianqing was shocked. He hurriedly pulled Yun Yao away from the wreckage of the divine battleship and flew toward the quicksand. The black sand poured down from the black hole like a flood and entered the wreckage of the divine battleship. If they wanted to escape back to the ghost desert, they could only go against the flow and pass through the black hole. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing hugged the heartbroken Yun Yao tightly, passed through the black sand, and entered the black hole. When the destructive icy blue shockwave engulfed the wreckage of the divine battleship, the two of them had already disappeared. In the next moment, the two of them passed through the black hole and returned to the ghost desert. Shwa! A ball of dazzling golden light wrapped tightly around Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao as it flew out of the black sand vortex. Yun Yao was already an arrow at the end of its flight, unable to protect herself. Passing through the spatial black hole, one would have to endure the attacks of the spatial crack and the power of the void. It was Ji Tianqing who used his dermic powers to form a shield to protect him and Yun Yao, allowing them to pass through the black hole smoothly. Even though he succeeded, his vitality was greatly damaged, and his injuries became even more severe. Fortunately, he and Yun Yao had finally escaped from the void and were out of danger. However, before he could see the scene around him clearly, he heard bursts of exclamations and shouts. Oh my God! He actually managed to escape back. It's Ji Tianqing. He is Ji Tianqing. What are you waiting for? Kill him. The great demon saint has ordered us to tear this man into pieces. We must not let him go. Shouts of shock and excitement sounded around the vortex one after another. Ji Tianqing immediately recognized that those were the voices of many powerful demon clan cultivators. He raised his head and looked around. Only then did he see the situation around him clearly. He saw dozens of powerful demon clan cultivators standing around the black sand vortex with a radius of hundreds of miles. There were more than a dozen tribulation stage cultivators wearing black armor and holding swords and dharma treasures. There were also more than a dozen ferocious and ever-changing blood gods illusions. In addition, there were more than 20 demonic beasts that were as large as mountains and had ferocious and violent auras. Whether it was the powerful demon clan cultivators, blood gods illusions, or demonic beasts, they all stared at him excitedly, their eyes full of bloodthirsty murderous intent. There was no need for anyone to give an order. All the powerful demon clan cultivators and blood gods illusions used powerful secret techniques to besiege him. Suddenly, overwhelming bloody light, demonic chi, and dharma spell shadows drowned Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao like a monstrous flood. Both of them were seriously injured. It was not easy for them to escape from the void, but they were besieged by so many powerful demon clan cultivators. They were in imminent danger, and their lives were at stake. However, Ji Tianqing had known that the great demon saint had brought a large number of powerful cultivators with him, so he was prepared. When the dharma spell shadows fell from the sky, he held the seriously injured Yun Yao in his left arm and waved his right hand to release a sky full of thunderbolts. 5-colored divine thunderbolts. The 5-colored thunderbolts with the power to annihilate everything penetrated the bloody light in the sky and scattered around the black sand vortex. Suddenly, several powerful demon clan cultivators were hit by the thunderbolts and turned into black ashes on the spot. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing took Yun Yao through the huge hole, rushed out of the black sand vortex, and escaped from the encirclement of the demon clan cultivators. Many powerful demon clan cultivators reacted immediately and chased after them. However, Ji Tianqing had already summoned the black dragon. Swoosh! The black dragon carried him and Yun Yao and flew across the sky at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the gray clouds. Dozens of powerful demon clan cultivators chased desperately for thousands of miles, but they completely lost track of the black dragon and could only return empty-handed. The power of Luo Li's self-destruction was, of course, extremely terrifying. The icy blue shockwave was enough to destroy thousands of miles of heaven and earth. Any living being below the Saint Realm would not be able to survive. However, no matter how powerful the shockwave was, it could not destroy the wreckage of the divine ship, nor could it damage the golden light seal of the 5 elements world. The shockwave hit the golden light seal, but it was blocked and quickly dissipated. After a long time, the icy blue flames that covered thousands of miles of the void gradually disappeared. The void returned to silence once more, leaving no trace behind as if nothing had happened. Luo Li had also completely disappeared, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. Thousands of miles away from the wreckage of the divine ship, in the empty void, a figure floated quietly. It was the great demon saint, who was seriously injured and unconscious. The red robe and armor that he was wearing, as well as his long hair, had all disappeared. His body, which was covered with black dragon scales, was also covered with dense cracks, and thousands of drops of demon blood seeped out. At this moment, he was like a porcelain bowl that was covered with cracks, and would shatter with a touch. However, his injuries were not limited to this. Not only was his physical body on the verge of collapse, but his soul was also seriously injured, and he was unconscious. He had lost consciousness, and was like a leaf, a piece of black paper, quietly floating in the void. After an unknown period of time, perhaps half a month, perhaps a month, finally, the great demon saint's eyelids moved, and he gradually opened his eyes. Damn bitch! She did not hesitate to self-destruct to injure me, how hateful. His lips moved, and he muttered in a venomous tone. Then, he slowly sat up, took out a pile of black, purple, and red elixirs, and consumed them. After a few days of cultivation, he had recovered some of his vitality, and he flew back leisurely. When he returned to the wreckage of the divine ship, he was stunned when he saw that it was not damaged at all, and there was not even a trace left behind. What kind of metal is this? It withstood the power of a martial saint's self-destruction, and it was not damaged at all. I can only look at the remains of the divine artifact with my own eyes, but I can't take it for myself. How infuriating. No, wait until I return to the North Underworld Mountain, I'll think of another way. If I can't do anything about it, I'll report this matter to Lord Demon God. He'll definitely have a way. With that thought in mind, the great demonic saint also passed through the black sand and entered the spatial hole. Shwa! In the next moment, the great demon saint escaped from the void and returned to the space above the black sand vortex. Around the whirlpool, there were still a few demon race experts guarding it. Seeing the great demonic saint appear, everyone immediately surrounded him and bowed respectfully. The great demon saint looked around, frowned and asked, "Where are the others? Where did they all go? That bastard Ji Tianqing, have you caught him yet?" The few demon clan experts trembled in fear, stammering and not daring to answer. "Are all of you deaf?" The great demon saint had a bad premonition, so he pointed at one of the demon race experts and shouted, "You tell me." The demon race expert who was pointed out could only answer truthfully, reporting to Lord Demon Saint, "That bastard Ji Tianqing has escaped from our encirclement and is nowhere to be seen. The others have spread out and are searching for Ji Tianqing's whereabouts." The great demon saint frowned fiercely, his eyes flashed with killing intent, and said angrily, "It's just as I expected. He really escaped. Damn bastard, he actually managed to escape from our encirclement with such heavy injuries." After this incident, the great demon saint finally understood how difficult it was to deal with Ji Tianqing. He glared at the few demon race experts and scolded them harshly, "You bunch of trash, what use do I have for you? Send a message to the others, tell them to get back here, I want to punish them severely." The few demon race experts were filled with fear, and their bodies were trembling in fear, but they quickly nodded and agreed. Unknowingly, a month had passed. In the evening, the Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao back to Luotian Mountain. Ever since Ji Tianqing left, he had not returned for more than 2 years. However, the tall, majestic, and sacred Luotian Mountain did not change much, and still looked the same as before. The setting sun shone, and the afterglow was golden, creating a peaceful scene. The Luotian Mountain was surrounded by white clouds, and the golden light was faintly discernible, adding to the sacred aura. Ji Tianqing stood on the back of the dragon, looking down at the Luotian Mountain in front of him, and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Ever since he escaped from the black sand vortex, he rode the Black Dragon and left the North Underworld Mountain without stopping, rushing back to the Luotian Kingdom. Yun Yao was seriously injured, and it almost affected Yaya and Qianqin in her womb. Ji Tianqing was worried about her and the two children's safety, so he let her enter the Sword World, and she had been in seclusion to heal her injuries. He did not rush back to Tianzhu Mountain, and went straight back to Luotian Mountain for Yun Yao's safety. After all, Tianzhu Mountain was not far from North Underworld Mountain, and it was not safe. If the great demon saint wanted to kill him, he would definitely chase after him, and it would be very dangerous. Luotian Mountain was located in the hinterland of the Luotian Kingdom, and it was the safest place. Moreover, Yun Yao not only had to go into seclusion to heal her injuries, but she also had to refine the Earth Spirit Divine Pearl as soon as possible. Only by staying at Luotian Mountain would he be most at ease. Swoosh! The Black Dragon passed through layers of clouds and landed on the peak of Luotian Mountain. Ji Tianqing had just returned to the Cloud Water Palace, and the Golden Dragon and Black Eagle came up to him and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, young Master Ji." Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that the two could dispense with the formalities, and quickly rushed back to Yun Yao's room. The Black Eagle hurriedly followed, and asked with concern, "Young Master, why did you suddenly come back? Where is Master? Is she not with you?" Ji Tianqing calmly explained, "Don't worry, Yao Yao came back with me, and she is fine." Black Eagle, quickly go and report to Granny Long that I have something to discuss with her. The Black Eagle naturally did not dare to delay, and hurriedly replied, "Yes," and turned to leave. Ji Tianqing walked around the room and saw that Yun Yao's room was as clean as ever, and the windows were bright and clean. He could not help but reveal a gratified expression. At least, during the time when he was not at Luotian Mountain, no one dared to neglect Yun Yao, and they would serve her wholeheartedly. He opened the Sword World and summoned Yun Yao. Swoosh! A white light flashed, and Yun Yao appeared in the room. She had already changed into a tidy moon-white dress, and her hair was meticulously combed, looking as ethereal as before. After a month of seclusion to recuperate, her injuries had already recovered by 80%, and there were no major problems. Her complexion had also returned to normal, and no one could tell that she was injured. However, her eyes were a little dim, and there was a hint of worry in her eyes, and her heart was heavy. Chapter 2043. Ji Tianqing could see that Yun Yao was in a heavy mood, so he tried to comfort her. "Yao Yao, the dead are gone. Don't wallow in sorrow and blame yourself anymore." Luo Li was the Divine Master's most trusted and valued divine official. She was also loyal to the Divine Master and swore to serve him with her life. The Divine Master ordered her to accompany you to find the Divine Orb and protect you. She sacrificed herself to protect us. This was not only because of your sisterly love, but also because of her loyalty to the Divine Master. What we need to do is not wallow in sorrow and blame ourselves. We need to pull ourselves together and find a way to avenge her. Ji Tianqing was the person who understood Yun Yao the most. He could see that Yun Yao blamed herself for Luo Li's death. In fact, he also felt a little guilty, but he never showed it. However, he was calmer and would not act on impulse. He knew that Luo Li had died for her loyalty and she had no regrets. The most important thing for him and Yun Yao to do was to kill the great demon saint and avenge Luo Li. Yun Yao remained silent and only nodded. Ji Tianqing tried to persuade her again. "Yao Yao, I have already asked Black Eagle to inform Granny Long. She will be here soon. Let's first report what happened in detail to Granny Long and let her send a message to the Divine Master. Let's see what the Divine Master decides." "Okay." Yun Yao nodded again and replied. Just as he said, Granny Long rushed over in a short while. As soon as she entered the room, she asked impatiently, "Yun Yao, Tianqing. You are both back." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao quickly bowed. Granny Long stood in front of the two of them and looked at Ji Tianqing from head to toe. Then, she revealed a gratified smile. Tianqing, I haven't seen you for more than 2 years. Your strength has become even more unfathomable. You have improved again. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and did not say much. Granny Long then looked at Yun Yao and said, Yao Yao, you and divine official Luo went to North Underworld Mountain to search for the divine pearl. You must have gone through a lot of dangers. Now that you've returned safe and sound, I'm relieved. Oh right, did you find the divine orb? What about divine official Luo? Why don't I see her? Hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's hearts became heavier and heavier. How astute was Granny Long! Seeing that the two of them were silent and had strange expressions, she suddenly had a bad premonition. Tianqing, Yun Yao, say something. What about divine official Luo? Why didn't she come back? Could it be that something happened to her? As she asked, the smile on Granny Long's face and the anticipation and gratification in her eyes quickly disappeared. Yun Yao could no longer hold back her sadness. She bowed to Granny Long and said in a sorrowful voice, Granny, it's all Yun Yao's fault. It's all my fault. Granny Long's expression changed. Her eyes were filled with shock. She asked anxiously, Yun Yao, what happened? Divine official Luo is one of the best martial saints. How could something happen to her? Yun Yao's eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She said in a sorrowful voice, we found the traces of the divine orb in North Underworld Mountain's ghost desert. But we had fought with the demon race's experts and revealed our whereabouts. We were surrounded by the great demon saint. She told Granny Long everything that had happened. After Granny Long heard it, she was shocked and angry. Her eyes were filled with mist. She couldn't help but shed tears. How could this happen? Divine official Luo was so young and talented. She was favored by the Divine Lord. How could she be forced to self-detonate? Goddamned demon race. Goddamned great demon saint. Granny Long's hatred for the demon race had reached its peak. She couldn't wait to kill the great demon saint to avenge Luo Li. However, Granny Long was a martial saint who had lived for 1,000 to 2,000 years. She had experienced all kinds of storms. Not long after, she calmed down. Her face was solemn and her eyes were cold. She said in a low voice, Luo Li's death and the death of hundreds of millions of divine nation citizens were caused by the demon race. Our Luo River divine nation and the North Underworld Mountain cannot live under the same sky. No matter what, we must expel the demon race and kill all of them to avenge Luo Li and the people of divine nation. After saying that, she turned to Yun Yao and said in a dignified voice, Yun Yao, I know that you and divine official Luo are good friends. She self-detonated and died. You must be sad. But since things have come to this, it's useless to be sad. The most important thing now is to recover from your injuries and refine the divine orb to increase your strength. Only when you are strong enough to kill the great demon saint and avenge Luo Li will she be able to rest in peace. You are the Divine Master's most valued Divine Lady and the future sovereign of Divine Nation. I believe that you will be able to suppress your pain, pull yourself together, and take revenge for Luo Li. Yun Yao nodded and said in a firm voice, Granny, don't worry. In this life, Yun Yao swears to kill the great demon saint. I will avenge Luo Li and appease her soul in heaven. Granny Long also nodded and said, all right, go to the secret room to heal your injuries and refine the divine orb as soon as possible. I still have something to say to Tianqing alone. Yun Yao looked at her and vaguely guessed her intention. However, Yun Yao didn't say anything. She just nodded and went to the secret room to cultivate. Only Granny Long and Ji Tianqing were left in the room. Ji Tianqing then said, Granny Long, don't worry. Luo Li died to protect me and Yun Yao. I will definitely kill the great demon saint and avenge her. Chapter 2044. What? The Northern Territory has fallen. Ji Tianqing turned pale with fright, revealing a look of disbelief. He never thought that in just a year of not paying attention to the situation in the Northern Territory, the situation would deteriorate to such an extent. Granny Long nodded with a solemn face and sighed heavily. The Northern Territory's 4 great empires, a total of 27 regions, have all been captured by the demons. Over the past 2 years, the demons have invested 50 million soldiers, persistently attacking the Northern Territory. Even though we have mobilized the forces of the great empires, conscripting 80 million soldiers, we still couldn't stop the demons' advance. More than 20 million soldiers died on the battlefield, and more than 300 million civilians died tragically under the demons' butcher's knife. More than 600 million civilians were persecuted by the flames of war, displaced and homeless, although the 27 regions that have fallen are not even 1/10 of Scandinavia's territory. But this is a fatal blow to Scandinavia's morale. Now, the entire Scandinavia is in a state of panic, the morale of the army is unstable, and the people are in turmoil. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's mood became even heavier. His fists in his sleeves were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. Damn it! Although these things were just empty numbers from Granny Long's mouth. But he had fought with the demons for many years, of course, he could imagine what kind of tragic disaster it would be. It would definitely be a scene of blood flowing and bones piling up like a mountain, a scene as tragic as hell. He couldn't help but recall the scene of him fighting against the demon race's army in the Central Plains. In his mind, many tragic and bloody scenes appeared. Thick anger and killing intent made him want to rush to the battlefield immediately, personally participate in the battle, and kill the demon's army. Granny Long was silent for a while, and seeing his strange expression, she said in a heavy tone, "Tianqing, this old woman knows what you are thinking. To be honest, this old woman can feel your anger and pain, and can't help but want to rush to the battlefield and kill the demons. But this old woman has a heavy responsibility, and also has to protect Luotian Mountain for the Divine Master. If this old woman leaves, Luotian Mountain will be in chaos, and the people's hearts will be even more scattered." Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and said solemnly, "Granny Long, you have to guard Luotian Mountain. Naturally, you can't rush to the battlefield and slay the fiend. But I'm different. I can personally go to the north to participate in the war and contribute to the protection of the God Nation." Granny Long revealed a gratified expression and nodded slightly. "Tianqing, you mentioned several times before that you wanted to go to the north to participate in the war, but this old one refused. But it's different now. You've already grown into an overlord. Even the dispirited pillar of heaven's mountains could be revived and restored to its former glory. This old one believes that you are already capable of shouldering heavy responsibilities by yourself. Over the past 2 years, I, the elders, and the generals of the various empires have tried all kinds of methods to deal with the demon race. Unfortunately, the demons were too powerful and treacherous. At this point, we are at our wits' end and can only use human lives to fill the gap, using the flesh and blood of our soldiers to build a defensive line to resist the advance of the demon race. If you can participate in the war, with your strength, stratagems, and methods, even if you can't repel the demon race's army, you can at least delay their advance." Ji Tianqing was about to agree, but Granny Long waved her hand to stop him. She said solemnly, "Tianqing, it's reasonable to say that you and Yunyao need to rest the most now. You have already left Luotian Mountain to take charge of Pillar of Heaven's mountains. This old one has no qualifications to ask you to fight for the Luotian God Nation. But this old one has no other choice. I can only shamelessly ask you. I hope that for the sake of our past friendship." As she spoke, Granny Long bent her waist and bowed deeply to him. Ji Tianqing's body shook and he quickly reached out to help her up. "Granny, what are you doing? Please get up quickly. I, Ji Tianqing, am not an ungrateful person. I will never forget the kindness of Luotian Mountain and the God Lord. Even if you don't ask me, I will also go to the north to participate in the war and kill the demons. This is not only for the God Nation's citizens, but also for me, for Yun Yao and Luo Li. Granny Long was deeply comforted. Her eyes were slightly red as she said solemnly, Tianqing, this old one sincerely thanks you on behalf of the God Lord and the God Nation's citizens for your kindness. Ji Tianqing hurriedly waved his hand and said, Granny, you're exaggerating. This is my duty in the first place. Don't worry, I will rest today and prepare. We will set off early tomorrow morning. Without waiting for him to finish, Granny Long shook her head and said, No. You can't rush. This old one sees that your cultivation is full and your soul is surging. There seems to be signs of a breakthrough. You must go into seclusion in Luotian Mountain for a period of time. After you have broken through, you can go to the north. Moreover, this old one has to report the news to the God Lord and wait for his decision. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Granny is indeed wise. To tell you the truth, I have reached the peak of the 8th stage and am about to welcome the 9th heavenly tribulation. Just yesterday, I had a premonition that the heavenly tribulation is about to descend. Granny Long was instantly filled with shock as her eyes widened in disbelief. What? You are about to break through to the 9th stage of the crossing tribulation realm. Heavens! It has only been 2.5 years and you have consecutively passed through 6 heavenly tribulations. This is simply unprecedented, an unimaginable miracle. Granny Long had lived for 2,000 years and could be said to be knowledgeable. She knew countless legends from the past to the present. But she had never heard of such an abnormal genius like Ji Tianqing. After a long time, her emotions calmed down and said with a gratified face, No wonder you can control the pillar of heaven's mountain and control the overall situation. Since this is the case, this old one is even more relieved. When you break through to the 9th stage of the crossing tribulation realm and head to the north, you will definitely be able to give the devil race a head-on blow. Alright, this old one will not delay your time. Quickly go and cultivate and prepare for the heavenly tribulation. After saying that, Granny Long bid farewell and left. Ji Tianqing also prepared for a while and entered the secret chamber to cultivate. After leaving the Cloud Water Palace, Granny Long returned to the Cloud Dragon Palace. She entered the secret chamber and walked to a simple and elegant table. On the table, there was an exquisite and gorgeous diamond-shaped gem. Granny Long cast a spell solemnly and injected her magic power into the diamond-shaped gem. Suddenly, the diamond-shaped gem lit up with white light and formed a wide light screen in midair. A woman in a blue dress with an elegant temperament and a noble appearance appeared on the white light screen. This woman seemed to be in her 20s. Her face was beautiful, her eyes were like stars, and her temperament was like a goddess from the 9 heavens. Without a doubt, she was the ruler of the Luoshui divine kingdom, the Luoshui martial god. Of course, this was not the true body of the Luoshui martial god. It was just a projection of her avatar. Granny Long, what's the matter? The Luoshui martial god looked at Granny Long calmly and asked. Once he forcefully ended his cultivation, the previous 300 years of hard work would be completely destroyed. Granny Long tried to dissuade him. Luoshui martial god shook his head and explained, Granny Long, don't worry. I'm at a critical moment in my cultivation. I won't come out of seclusion. Hearing her say that, Granny Long felt a little relieved. After thinking for a while, she was enlightened and said, I understand now. Divine Lord, you want to send a clone to the North Underworld Mountain to kill the great demon saint and avenge divine official Luo? Luoshui martial god nodded slightly and said seriously, that's right. I haven't shown my face for 300 years. I'm afraid the world has already forgotten my heaven-defying methods. Now that the demon race is invading and the great demon saint killed Luo Li, if I don't take action, what prestige do I have left? I'll send a divine soul clone to kill my way into the North Underworld Mountain. Not only will I kill the great demon saint, I'll also destroy the North Underworld Palace. Luo Shui martial god's tone was cold, and his voice was sonorous and unquestionable. Granny Long immediately bowed and cupped her hands. Divine Lord is wise. I wish Divine Lord victory and destroy the North Underworld Palace in one go. Luo Shui martial god didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Her figure soon disappeared in the white light screen. A moment later, the white light screen also dissipated. Granny Long was stunned for a moment. A gratified smile appeared on her face as she muttered to herself, Luo Li, Divine Lord has personally avenged you. If you're in heaven, you should rest in peace. In the next few days, Luo Shui Mountain regained its peace. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were cultivating in seclusion in a secret room. Yun Yao was busy refining the Earth Spirit Divine Pearl, while Ji Tianqing was consolidating his martial Tao and preparing for the 9th heavenly tribulation. Granny Long was as busy as ever. She had to preside over the overall situation of Luo Shui Mountain and worry about the war in the north. The disciples of Luo Shui Mountain were also cultivating day and night to increase their strength. When the time was right, they would rush to the battlefield to kill the demon race and shed blood for the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom. At the same time, the North Underworld Mountain that had just calmed down was stirred up again. Previously, Ji Tianqing and the others barged into North Underworld Mountain and slaughtered the entire demon race tribe. They were even surrounded by the great demon saint. The news had already spread in North Underworld Mountain, causing billions of demons to discuss it. Now that it had been more than a month, it finally calmed down. But on this evening, an uninvited guest appeared in the sky above Saint Devil City. Whoosh! A crack suddenly appeared in the sky tens of thousands of feet above the ground. A dark golden divine light lit up like a setting sun. An icy blue figure flew out of the giant crack. This figure was a young woman with a graceful figure, elegant and holy, and a cold aura. She wore an icy blue dress, and her hair was tied up in a noble and dignified bun. She wore a simple but not simple jade crown and hairpin. If this was the human world, the people would definitely bow and worship her. They would think that a goddess of the 9 heavens had descended to the mortal world. After all, her appearance and aura were no different from that of a god. She was one of martial god Luo Shui's divine soul avatars. The setting sun was as red as blood, illuminating heaven and earth. However, it couldn't pierce through the layers of dark clouds above Saint Devil City. Saint Devil City was the most sacred and prosperous city in North Underworld Mountain. This was the sacred land of North Underworld Mountain. North of the city was the divine mountain where North Underworld Palace was located. The city was situated on a plain surrounded by mountains. It had a radius of 200 miles, and there were more than 2 million demons living in it. Giant black stone walls that were hundreds of miles long formed a circle around the city, protecting it. The city was flourishing and prosperous, and there were a myriad of buildings and palaces within it. Towering towers stood like trees in a forest, and there were row upon row of residences that were innumerable. All the buildings were built with black, brown, and gray rocks. All the buildings retained their ancient style. One could vaguely see the shadows of the ancient demon race's buildings. Giant statues of demons and asuras stood at the top of many tall towers, buildings, and palaces. They looked solemn and mysterious. At this moment, Luo Shui was standing high in the sky, looking down at Saint Devil City. Saint Devil City was bustling with people. Lanterns were lit, and it was a lively scene. However, some experts noticed something strange. They saw the sky crack and the golden light burst out with their own eyes. Immediately, those experts shouted loudly and spread the news. Chapter 2046. The entire Saint Devil City was in an uproar. Tens of thousands of demons looked up at the sky, loudly discussing and shouting. Everyone, look. There's someone in the sky. There was a golden light just now. The sky seems to have split open. I saw it too. There's indeed someone standing in the sky, and it seems to be a human woman. That's a human expert. A strong enemy has invaded. What are you all standing there for? Quickly report to the city guard. Ha ha ha. Who dares to trespass into our holy city? They must be tired of living. I bet that in less than 10 breaths of time, that human woman will be killed by the second demon lord and eaten as dinner. Of course. The second demon lord is in charge of the city guard and the city guard. He has the most violent temperament. Any foreign race that falls into his hands will become his meal. Look, the second demon lord has indeed made his move. Just as the demons were discussing, a bloody light shot into the sky from the plaza in the center of the city. The dark red light soared into the sky, heading straight for the Luo Shui clone. Within that bloody light was a monster the size of a mountain of flesh. It had a shockingly round body and 4 short, thick limbs. Probably because its body was too fat and huge, its body was covered in dark red sarcomas. It looked extremely sinister and terrifying. It had a round head on top of its 10 feet tall body. It had a wide, bloody mouth, and a pair of small eyes stared at the Luo Shui clone, flashing with a savage and bloodthirsty light. Without a doubt, this disgusting and ugly monster was the second of the 36 demon lords, the infamous second demon lord. At the same time, it was the commander of the city guard and the city guard, in charge of the safety of the holy city. Behind it were 4 city guard captains, all of them second and third level tribulation transcendence experts. In just 2 breaths of time, the dark red light flew into the sky and arrived in front of the Luo Shui clone. The 2 sides were separated by 10,000 feet, facing each other in the sky. Ha ha ha. This lord has been bored for a long time. I didn't expect that a human woman would take the initiative to deliver herself to me today. Such fresh and tender flesh, blood and soul incomparably pure. It's definitely a delicious meal that's hard to come by in 100 years. The second demon monarch stared greedily at the Luo Shui doppelganger and laughed in satisfaction. Black saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth. The 4 captains of the city guard army also had sinister smiles on their faces, their bodies surging with murderous intent. In Saint Devil City, countless devils looked up at the sky, staring at the second demon monarch and the Luo Shui clone, waiting for a good show. Everyone was certain that the human woman was dead meat. Thinking that the tender human girl was about to be torn into pieces and eaten by the second demon king, people couldn't help but feel their blood boiling. A brutal aura surged in their hearts. However, the scene in the next moment made everyone dumbfounded. The Luo Shui doppelganger looked at the second demon lord expressionlessly. Without saying a word, it raised its right palm and shot out a dazzling stream of icy blue light. Shwa! That icy blue flowing light was like a fire that covered the sky. It was also like a meteor that streaked across the sky and engulfed the second demon monarch and the 4 city guard captains. Although the second demon monarch was a powerhouse in the 8th stage of the crossing tribulation realm, the strength of the 4 city guard captains was not ordinary. But the 5 powerhouses were caught off guard and did not even have the chance to dodge. Boom! With a muffled sound, the bodies of the second demon monarch and the 4 city guard captains instantly collapsed, turning into fragments that fell from the sky. Even their souls were torn apart and destroyed on the spot. The Luo Shui doppelganger had actually killed 5 crossing tribulation realm powerhouses with a casual palm strike. The entire process was understated, without the slightest trace of smoke or fire. It was simply elegant and otherworldly, like the work of an immortal. In Saint Devil City, countless devils witnessed it with their own eyes. All of them were dumbfounded, their bodies stiffened on the spot. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one could believe that the human woman had such terrifying power. However, this was only the beginning of the disaster. The icy blue flowing light's power did not decrease at all. It poured into Saint Devil City like a flood. Rumble. With an earth-shattering sound, countless houses and buildings were engulfed by the icy blue flowing light. In an area of 5 kilometers, tens of thousands of houses and palaces were immediately covered by an icy blue sea of fire. A huge pit appeared in the ground, and a wide ravine split open. Tens of thousands of houses and buildings were reduced to ashes in the sea of fire, reduced to ruins. Tens of thousands of devil martial artists and commoners were also burned to ashes by the icy blue sea of fire, no longer existing. Such a terrifying scene, with its world-destroying momentum, immediately awakened the entire Saint Devil City. All kinds of screams, shouts, angry curses, and roars converged into an earth-shattering sound wave that exploded in the sky above the city. Thousands of devil experts and armored city guards soared into the sky with murderous intent, wanting to besiege the Luo Shui doppelganger. However, before the thousands of experts could fly into the sky, the Luo Shui doppelganger waved her slender hand again, sprinkling down an icy blue flowing light. Water moon clear sky. The icy blue splendor that was dozens of kilometers long fell from the sky like a crescent moon. Instantly, the icy blue crescent moon released a torrential flood that poured into Saint Devil City. More than half of Saint Devil City was submerged in the icy blue flood. The icy blue divine water was bone-chilling and quickly turned into extreme ice. Hundreds of thousands of houses and buildings, and millions of devil martial artists and commoners were all sealed in the extreme ice. The sturdy stone houses and palaces were all frozen to dust, and the ground also cracked open. 90% of the devils below the tribulation transcending realm were immediately frozen to death, all of them turned into ice crystals. Only the tribulation transcending realm experts were able to resist the power of the extreme ice. After suffering heavy injuries, they bitterly held on. In an instant, half of the originally bustling Saint Devil City was turned into a ghost town. More than 1 million devil martial artists and commoners were killed by the Luo Shui doppelganger's divine technique, their bodies and souls turned to dust. Many of the devils died in an instant, not feeling any pain at all. Sealed in ice crystals, they still retained their expressions and movements from the last moment of their lives. Many people looked up at the sky, their eyes and faces filled with fear. Such a horrifying scene scared all the devils out of their wits. The surviving experts of the demon clan immediately realized that the human woman in the blue dress must be a divine transcendence expert. At the very least, she was a peak martial saint. Only a peak martial saint could release such a terrifying power, destroying half of Saint Devil City in one move and slaughtering millions of devils. Saint Devil City was instantly thrown into chaos. In the other half of the city, the millions of devils were horrified, fleeing out of the city in panic. All kinds of cries, curses, and roars mixed together, resounding through the sky. Countless devils fled through the streets and alleys, speeding through the sky, fleeing to the north of the city. As long as they crossed a few mountains and fled to the north, they would be able to reach the foot of the divine mountain. Chapter 2047. However, Luo Shui's clone came with a monstrous hatred. She had made up her mind to destroy Saint Devil City and flatten Baiming Palace to avenge Luo Li. How could she let those millions of demons go? Heavenly River overturn. Luo Shui's clone looked down at Saint Devil City expressionlessly. Looking at the millions of demons that were fleeing in panic, her eyes were extremely cold, without the slightest bit of pity. She gave a low shout and raised her hands to form a seal, using another divine technique. Suddenly, thousands of silver lights lit up in the sky. That was the endless power of the stars, gathered by Luo Shui's divine technique. Swish! 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 After a few breaths, thousands of silver lights gathered together, forming an indomitable starry river that was hundreds of miles wide. The silver-white starry river was like a huge waterfall, descending from the depths of the starry sky and falling towards Saint Devil City. In the 1,000-mile-long starry river, there was an endless amount of starry divine fire, enough to burn everything. Boom! With a deafening muffled sound, the starry river fiercely hit Saint Devil City. Instantly, the surging star divine fire spread out like a torrential flood, drowning the other half of Saint Devil City. In the area of hundreds of miles, hundreds of thousands of buildings and millions of demons were all floating in the sea of starry fire, desperately struggling. No matter how sturdy the buildings were, even if they were protected by demon dower rays, they were all burned by the starry divine fire, turning into ruins and dust. All the demons below the crossing calamity realm were burned to ashes, leaving only black ashes scattered in the ruins. Not only were their physical bodies destroyed, even their souls were annihilated in the sea of starry fire. What a scene of destruction! In just 10 breaths, millions of demons and martial artists were annihilated in the sea of starry fire. Only a few tens of thousands of people who were stronger or had magical treasures to protect themselves were lucky enough to survive. Of course, these survivors were also heavily injured, fleeing Saint Devil City in a sorry state, fleeing towards the north. Not long after, the sea of starry fire and Luo Shui's extreme ice gradually dissipated. Saint Devil City returned to peace. The calamity that destroyed the world was finally over. However, Saint Devil City was also destroyed, turning into ruins with a radius of 200 miles. The earth cracked, filled with ravines and deep pits. Not a single intact building or palace could be found among the ruins. There were dilapidated walls everywhere, and the ground was covered in debris and black ash. Anyone who saw this scene would find it hard to believe that this used to be the most prosperous Saint Devil City in the North Underworld Mountains. This ancient and sacred city with 10,000 years of history was destroyed just like that. Of the more than 2 million demon civilians and martial artists, only a few 100,000 remained. They fled miserably toward the northern Divine Mountain. Of course, there were more than 1,000 tribulation transcendence experts guarding Saint Devil City. There was also a demon saint and 6 demon monarchs. The Luo Shui clone only used 20 breaths of time to execute 2 divine techniques and completely destroy Saint Devil City. This was something that no one had expected. The demon saint and the 6 demon monarchs were shocked, terrified, and furious. Hundreds of thousands of heavily injured devil race elites had fled the Saint Devil City. However, this demon saint and the 6 demon monarchs were too ashamed to escape. They could only stay and fly high up in the sky, surrounding the Luo Shui clone. The demon saint leading the group was the new demon saint who had just broken through to the martial sage realm a few months ago, Qianren. This person was 30 feet tall and his body was thin. His bones and flesh were like firewood, and he looked like a black demon wolf. However, there were 4 pairs of wings on his back. The black wings shone with a cold light, and his body exuded an extremely sharp aura. He stood in the sky, 10 miles away from the Luo Shui clone, and they faced each other from afar. The other 6 demon monarchs were all of different sizes and had strange appearances. Each of them had their own talents and skills. The group formed a circle, holding weapons, and glared at the Luo Shui clone with hatred in their eyes. Demon Saint Qianren frowned and glared at the Luo Shui clone. He asked in a low voice, "You bitch, what grudge do you have with my tribe? How could you be so cruel and vicious? You destroyed the entire Saint Devil City and killed 2 million of my people. You are infuriating. Tell me, who are you and why did you do this?" In fact, Demon Saint Qianren had guessed that the Luo Shui clone was related to the Luo Shui kingdom. He was just saying this on purpose to stall for time. After all, the Luo Shui clone was much stronger than an ordinary martial saint. He was definitely not her match. He could only wait for the experts in Baiming Palace to come to his aid. The Luo Shui clone slowly turned her head and looked at him coldly. She said in a cold voice, "I killed 2 million demon clan members. Am I cruel and vicious and infuriating? Your demon clan invaded the Luo Shui kingdom and killed 300 million people, causing 700 million people to be homeless. What kind of behavior is this? It is cruel and bloodthirsty to the extreme. It is so vicious that it makes one's hair stand on end. Even heaven and earth will not tolerate it. As he spoke, the Luo Shui clone naturally exuded a soaring hatred and killing intent, forming an invisible pressure that enveloped the area within a radius of 100 li. Demon Saint Qian Ren and the 6 demon monarchs were shocked by her pressure, and their hearts were filled with respect. However, Demon Saint Qian Ren did not panic. He did not show any fear or worry. He looked at the Luo Shui clone and sneered disdainfully, "I see. I did not guess wrongly. You are really from the Luo Shui kingdom. Ha ha ha. The people of the Luo Shui kingdom are all weak and useless insects. They do not have the right to occupy the vast land in the east of the continent. So what if my army has invaded and killed a few 100 million people? This is only the beginning. Sooner or later, my warriors will kill all the people of the Luo Shui kingdom and occupy the entire Luo Shui kingdom. Of course, you will not be able to see that day. Because today, you will definitely die." Demon Saint Qian Ren had already sensed that in Baiming Palace, which was 1,000 miles away, there was a strong demonic aura. 2 incomparably powerful auras were rushing over at the fastest speed. Therefore, he had the confidence to be so confident. How could Luo Shui not see through Demon Saint Qian Ren's intentions? "Humph, do you think that the great demon saint can save you?" Wishful thinking. The reason why I am talking to you is because I am waiting for him to come and die. As she spoke, the Luo Shui clone raised her hands again. Her 10 fingers formed a seal and instantly, dozens of icy blue sword lights shot out. Swish! 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 The more than 90 icy blue sword lights were like icicles. They were bone-chilling and extremely sharp. The numerous sword lights shot out in all directions like a blossoming ice flower. It was extremely beautiful. Demon Saint Qian Ren saw that the situation was not good. He instinctively teleported to dodge, but he was still stabbed by a sword light. A deep wound was left on his waist. The 6 demon monarchs were shocked. They wanted to escape, but it was too late. Chapter 2048. The 6 demon lords were lucky enough to survive. However, they were severely injured. Their bodies were drenched in blood and they looked miserable. Demon Saint Thousand Ren frowned. His eyes were filled with worry. He was worried that he and the 6 demon lords would not be able to hold on until reinforcements arrived. "All of you, brace yourselves for this sage. Everyone, let's work together and set up the ancient demon 6 directions array. We must trap her." Demon Saint Thousand Ren ordered. He took the lead to cast a spell and cast a blood-red light that covered the sky towards Luo Shui's clone. The 6 demon monarchs disregarded their injuries and spread out into a formation, casting spells to form a demon Dao grand array. The blood-red light that covered the sky, the surging demon Qi, and the shadows of various spells immediately engulfed Luo Shui's clone. A saint-level array was quickly forming. It covered a radius of 200 miles. Demon Saint Thousand Ren knew that it would take at least a few hours to complete the array. He did not dare to hope that he could trap her for a few hours. He only hoped that he could delay her for half an hour. However, he soon realized that this was just wishful thinking. Luo Shui's clone looked around expressionlessly. Looking at the blood-red light that covered the sky, a cold glint flashed across her eyes. She did not say a word. She raised her hands and cast a spell. Dozens of icy blue light blades shot out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. More than 60 icy blue light blades formed an extraordinary sword array. They pierced forward as fast as lightning. With a loud boom boom boom, the bloody light barrier that had just been condensed was immediately shattered into pieces by the icy blue light blade. A huge gap appeared. Luo Shui's clone moved gracefully. In a flash, she stepped through the gap and appeared in the sky 15 miles away. At the same time, the sword array formed by the icy blue light blades struck two demon lords. The two demon lords did not have the chance to dodge. They were immediately turned into dust by the light blades. Luo Shui's clone took another step and teleported 15 miles away. She suddenly appeared behind another demon lord. She raised her slender white hand and struck the demon lord with her palm. Bam! Before this demon monarch could react, his body shattered into pieces with a bang, and even his soul was destroyed. Following that, Luo Shui's clone continued to teleport. Within 2 breaths, the remaining 3 demon monarchs were instantly killed. The 6 demon monarchs had all been reduced to ashes, and the demon Dao holy array that had yet to be formed naturally vanished. The 1000 Devil Saint was completely terrified. He no longer dared to continue fighting and fled to the north in a panic. At this moment, he no longer dared to hope that he could block the attack of the Luo Shui clone. He only hoped to shake off the pursuit and safely return to Baiming Palace. Shua! The 1000 demon saint turned into a streak of crimson light and sped towards the north at lightning speed. His figure flickered continuously in the sky. However, he had only flown 200 miles when he was caught up by the Luo water clone. Shua! The Luo water clone took light steps forward, her posture graceful and calm. Every step she took brought her several dozen li away. In just 7 steps, she had caught up with the 1000 demon saint. She raised her right hand and struck him with her palm. In her slender and tender palm, the star fire surged violently and formed a wide silver light blade. It slashed towards the 1000 demon saint like a guillotine. The 1000 demon saint sensed the impending danger. He instantly felt a chill down his spine and his soul almost left his body. He turned around without hesitation and cast a spell to form a crimson light shield in an attempt to block the attack. Bam! With a muffled explosion, the star light blade shattered the crimson light and struck the 1000 demon saint. He was sent flying on the spot. Blood spurted from his body as he tumbled towards the north. After flying for 50 li, he managed to neutralize the impact and stabilized his body. He looked down and saw a 2-foot-long wound on his chest. It was so deep that his bones could be seen. His robes and soft armor had been torn open, rolling outwards like his flesh. Dark purple demon blood flowed out from the wound and sprinkled in the sky. The excruciating pain continued to assault the 1000 demon saint, causing him to break out in cold sweat. However, he did not dare to hesitate or treat his wound. He continued to flee towards the north with all his might. After 3 breaths, he finally crossed a towering mountain range and flew over a valley. He was already halfway there. He was still 500 li away from Baiming Palace. Before the 1000 demon saint could heave a sigh of relief, an icy blue stream of light attacked him from behind. It caused him to feel fear from the depths of his soul. Swoosh! The icy blue stream of light streaked across the sky and engulfed the 1000 demon saint. His flesh and blood were frozen stiff. He could not circulate his demon chi smoothly and his flying speed was reduced by half. Bam! Another 1000 feet long ice sword slashed down and instantly cut off his pair of wings. The black wings shattered into pieces. Dark purple demon blood spurted out and sprinkled in the sky. The 1000 demon saint let out a shrill cry and continued to flee towards the north. After crossing the valley, he flew over a towering mountain peak that was 10,000 feet tall. In front of him was a dark brown wasteland. Hundreds of thousands of heavily injured demon race elites were flying above the wasteland. They looked towards the north as if their lives depended on it. With so many demons gathered together, it was like a black flood. At the end of the wasteland was a towering mountain that was 10,000 feet tall. Everything below the mountainside of the giant mountain was pitch black. However, everything above the mountainside was dark red in color. It was extremely eerie. Boundless black clouds and demon chi shrouded the entire mountain and covered the vast wasteland. Without a doubt, the majestic mountain was the divine mountain where the ancestral demon gods and demon saints resided. The famous Beiming Palace was located on that divine mountain. Finally, he saw the divine mountain. The 1,000-ren demon saint was excited. He endured his injuries and sped up. However, just as he was flying above the wasteland, another wave of blade light and sword shadows came down from behind him. Swish 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 swish. The Lua water clone was waving its arms and releasing icy light that covered the sky. It formed millions of light blades and bombarded the entire wasteland. The 1,000-ren demon saint did not dare to be careless. He could only take out a shield and cast a spell to enlarge it to protect himself. Countless icy light and sword shadows bombarded the shield, causing it to tremble. Bloody light and black demon chi burst out. The 1,000-ren demon saint had a dharma treasure to protect himself. He was temporarily safe. However, the hundreds of thousands of demons in the wasteland were instantly killed. Bam 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 bam. Endless muffled sounds rang out continuously, one after another. Batch after batch of demon race elites fell like wheat being cut down. They were killed and turned into dregs. The dark brown wasteland was also filled with holes from the impact of the blade light and sword shadows. Sand and dust filled the air. It was a chaotic scene. It was as if doomsday had arrived. After 10 breaths of time, the millions of icy light and sword shadows finally dissipated. The wasteland in a radius of 300 miles had long been turned into ruins filled with holes and ravines. Tens of thousands of demon race elites had been turned into flesh and blood and scattered on the wasteland. The dark brown earth and soil were also dyed with a layer of dark purple. The tens of thousands of demon race elites who were lucky enough to survive were also horrified. They fled in all directions. The 1,000-ren demon saint was lucky enough to survive. He flew toward the divine mountain in a panic. Chapter 2049. Swoosh. 2 gigantic palms that covered the sky descended from the heavens like the hands of a god. Everything within a radius of 10 miles was covered by the palms. The air was also compressed and turned into a vacuum zone. Even the space was sealed by a formless force. The 1,000-ren demon saint wanted to teleport away, but he was unable to do so. No. At the moment of life and death, the 1,000-ren demon saint looked up at the gigantic palms in the sky and let out a furious roar. His voice was filled with unwillingness. 200 miles away, at the end of the wasteland, a dazzling blood-red light shone. The blood-red light sped over and wrapped around 2 figures. They were both martial sages of the demon Tao. Stop! How dare you! How dare you! The 2 demon sages had just received news of the enemy's invasion and destruction of Saint Devil City. They had rushed over to help. However, they had just flown down from the godly mountain when they saw this scene in the sky above the wasteland. The 2 of them were filled with rage and could not help but shout. The 1,000-ren demon saint also saw the 2 demon sages and was overjoyed. He shouted, "Great demon saint, 3rd demon saint, save me." Without a doubt, the 2 demon sages that were flying over were the great demon saint and the 3rd demon saint. However, it was a pity that they were too far away. Even if they wanted to save him, they were too far away. The 2 of them could only watch as the 2 gigantic palms that covered the sky slammed into the 1,000-ren demon saint. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the 1,000-ren demon saint's body exploded and turned into tens of thousands of pieces of flesh and blood that splattered in all directions. Dark purple blood mist wrapped around the pieces of flesh and blood and scattered in the sky. A dark purple godly soul flew out from the pieces of flesh and blood and fled toward the godly mountain in a panic. At the same time, the two gigantic icy blue palms did not lose their power and slammed into the wasteland. Rumble. An earth-shattering explosion erupted and shook the universe. The wasteland, which was already in ruins, was immediately smashed into two craters that were hundreds of miles wide. Dirt and rocks flew everywhere. The wasteland was completely destroyed. It was truly earth-shattering. Swoosh! The Luo Shui clone did not give up. Its figure flashed as it chased after the 1,000 demon saint's godly soul. Even though the 1,000 nightmare demonic saint's physical body had been destroyed and only his divine soul was left, the 1,000 nightmare demonic saint was still alive. However, as long as he managed to escape and recuperate in seclusion for 100 years, he would be able to rebuild his body and return to his peak state. Furthermore, Luo Shui knew that the demon race had all sorts of evil secret techniques that could allow the 1,000 demon saint to recover his powers in a short period of time. Therefore, she had to eliminate the source of the problem. If he didn't kill the 1,000 nightmare devil saint today, the 1,000 nightmare devil saint would be able to slaughter hundreds of thousands of human soldiers on the northern battlefield. In the blink of an eye, the Luo water clone caught up with the 1,000 demon saint's spirit. She conjured a spell with both her hands and waved them rapidly. She unleashed a torrential amount of spiritual energy towards the 1,000 demon saint. Soul extinguishing fist. The incomparably powerful spiritual energy was originally an intangible thing. Under the support of Luo Shui's secret technique, it actually condensed into a light blue fist light that was the size of a palace. At the same time, the great devil saint and the third devil saint also arrived at the scene. Damn you, bitch! You are courting death. Today, I will tear you to pieces. The two devil saints roared at the same time. They waved their palms and released a powerful amount of spiritual energy towards the Luo water clone. If Luo Shui insisted on killing the 1,000 demon saint and refused to stop, she would also be injured by the two devil saints. The two devil saints were certain that she would not allow both of them to be injured. She would definitely cast a spell to defend herself. This way, the 1,000 demon saint would be able to escape death. However, what the two devil saints did not expect was that the Luo water clone actually ignored their attacks. She stared at the 1,000 demon saint's spiritual energy coldly. She was determined to kill him. Kaboom! The light blue soul extinguishing fist struck the 1,000 demon saint's spiritual energy with a mighty force. Amidst the thunderous sound, the dark purple spiritual energy was instantly shattered into pieces and scattered across the sky. The newly promoted devil saint, 1,000 Ren, had died just like that. Not even his corpse was left behind. He had only enjoyed 2 months of glory. He did not even have the time to go to the battlefield and contribute to the demon race before he died just like that. The great devil saint and the third devil saint witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were so angry that their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Their bodies were burning with murderous flames. In the next moment, the two devil saints released their spiritual energy attacks and struck the Luo water clone. Bam! The Luo Shui clone was sent flying backwards, tumbling 100 miles away. Her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Fresh blood flowed out of her mouth and nose. She was in a sorry state. However, other than that, she was not injured at all. Even though this was only a clone of the Luo water martial god. She had used the Luo water heavenly supreme Tao to peel off a strand of her spiritual energy and used her own blood to create this spiritual energy clone. However, this was still a real body made of flesh and blood. It possessed 20% of her strength. Even though she had taken on the combined attacks of the great devil saint and the third devil saint, she was only slightly injured. She was sent flying 50 miles away. She quickly stabilized her body and stood steadily in the sky. Swoosh! A green light flashed across her body. She circulated her energy to suppress the chaotic dermic powers. Her spiritual energy also calmed down. In the blink of an eye, she returned to her original state, and no one could tell that she had been injured. She stood proudly in the sky and looked coldly at the great devil saint. She said in a cold voice, "Great devil saint, Ling Xian. You've finally appeared." The Luo water clone's eyes were fixed on the great devil saint, and she did not even look at the third devil saint. The third devil saint, Li Tua, was an old demon who had been famous for 2,000 years. His original body was an ancient variant descendant of the heaven-devouring blood leech. He was incomparably huge, valiant, and ugly. Normally, he would appear in front of others in his magical form. He was a middle-aged man who was over 3 meters tall and covered in dark red. However, the Luo water clone had come to Dark North Mountain to avenge Luo Li. Her primary goal was to kill the great devil saint, Ling Xian. Ling Xian stood in the sky and frowned as he looked at the Luo water clone. His eyes flickered with bewilderment. "Who are you? How do you know my real name?" For 2,000 years, he had only had one title, Dark North Mountain's Great Devil Saint. Regardless of whether it was the demons of Dark North Mountain or the various powerhouses of Shenwu continent, everyone knew that he was the strongest demon. However, no one knew that he was not actually a true demon. He had been born 4,000 years ago, and he was a citizen of the vast divine kingdom. He had been born in an ancient tribe called Shadow. At that time, Shenwu continent had 4 divine kingdoms that existed side by side. There had been endless disputes, and the various tribes had killed each other. The ancient tribe that Ling Xian had been born in had a special innate bloodline that allowed them to grasp rare divine abilities and secret arts. Originally, this ancient tribe had stood aloof from worldly affairs and lived in seclusion. However, the flames of war had spread to this tribe and destroyed its peace and tranquility. A certain empire's army had passed by and discovered the Shadow tribe's innate divine ability. Thus, the empire's army had abducted everyone from the tribe and forced them to join the army and serve the empire. Anyone who resisted had been cruelly killed by the empire's army. The few survivors had no choice but to submit to fate and follow the empire's army. Chapter 2050. On this mainland, every martial saint expert was not simple. All of them had extraordinary experiences or extraordinary backgrounds. As for Ling Xian, he was a peak martial saint and the strongest person in North Underworld Mountain. His life experiences could be said to be legendary. When he was young, his home was destroyed, his parents were all killed, and his entire tribe was destroyed. But he still had to endure the humiliation and be used by his enemies. He fought for the empire and made great contributions. The endless killing and war made him cold-blooded, emotionless, cruel, and numb. At the same time, his bloodline talent was awakened and his strength increased by leaps and bounds. In a short 200 years, he broke through to the martial saint realm and completely awakened his talent and abilities. In the process, he came across a remnant of an ancient demon path secret technique. After cultivating, he realized that the demon path secret technique was very compatible with his talent. They complemented each other and made him a rare genius. The demon path secret technique, the killing and war, and the tragic experiences of his youth made him lose his humanity and fall into the demon path. 300 years later, he killed his enemies with his own hands and slaughtered millions of soldiers. Furthermore, he had single-handedly destroyed that unstable empire and taken revenge for his blood feud. However, his actions had caused public outrage in the divine nation of Taihao, and he had become a devil that everyone wanted to kill. Martial God Vast Divine Kingdom sent out a divine order and sent a large number of divine guards and experts to kill Ling Xian. Ling Xian no longer had a place in the Vast Divine Kingdom. He could only run for his life and leave the Vast Divine Kingdom. During this process, he had gone through many dangerous situations and killed countless powerhouses. Dozens of years later, he finally escaped the pursuit of the vast divine kingdom and hid in the dark and terrifying North Underworld mountain. It was said that at the beginning, he was not accepted by the demon race. After countless battles, he spent 100 years to gain a foothold in North Underworld mountain. In the next 1,000 years, he tried every possible means to find the complete demon path secret technique. After he mastered the technique, he completely turned into a demon. Also, he used 1,000 years to unify thousands of demon race tribes and became the strongest force in North Underworld mountain. From then on, no one remembered his identity or name. Everyone only knew that he was the strongest person in North Underworld mountain, the leader of the 4 great demon saints, the most savage and tyrannical great demon saint. After thousands of years, someone suddenly called out his real name. Moreover, the other party was a young and beautiful human woman. How could Ling Xian not be shocked? His gaze towards the Luo Shui clone was filled with killing intent and fear. The Luo Shui clone's expression remained indifferent as he spoke in an icy tone. Ling Xian, back then, you massacred an army of 1,000,000 and destroyed the entire Xuanya Empire. Have you already forgotten such a heinous crime? Great Demon Saint furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with hatred, but he suddenly grinned coldly. Ha ha ha. So it's about this. Since that's the case, you're the martial saint of the vast divine nation, and you're here to seek revenge. After guessing the identity of the other party, the great demon saint was relieved. He sneered and said, I didn't expect that after thousands of years, Tai Hao still wouldn't give up on hunting me down. But he's old and muddle-headed. He actually sent a woman to break into the North Underworld mountain to deal with me. Isn't he seeking his own death? After he finished speaking, the Luo Shui clone coldly said, No. You're wrong. This god isn't from the vast divine nation, and I'm not here to settle old scores with you. Great Demon Saint was stunned. He frowned in confusion and asked, Then who are you? The Luo Shui clone coldly said, Luo Li is this god's most valued god official and servant. I've always treated her as my own. And you? You caused her to die tragically in the void and self-destruct. This god has come to the North Underworld mountain this time to avenge her. Great Demon Saint immediately understood her identity. He couldn't help but tremble as his eyes widened in disbelief. Avenge Luo Li. This god? Are you martial god Luo Shui? After he finished speaking, Great Demon Saint suddenly reacted and quickly shook his head in denial. No, that's impossible. Martial god Luo Shui resides high up in the divine nation and has been cultivating in seclusion. How could she come out of seclusion to seek revenge for a servant? Great Demon Saint looked at the Luo Shui clone in shock and said with certainty, Even if you're martial god Luo Shui, you're definitely not her true body. You must be a clone. The Luo Shui clone didn't deny it and coldly said, That's right, this god's clone has arrived. Great Demon Saint let out a sigh of relief and said with a playful sneer, Ha ha ha. Martial god Luo Shui is really confident to look down on the North Underworld mountain. A mere clone dares to barge into my clan's holy city and start a massacre. You even want to seek revenge from this god. It seems that not only will you not be able to take revenge today, but you'll also follow in Luo Li's footsteps and die. The Luo Shui clone wasn't angry and said in a dignified tone, So what if I'm a clone? It's enough to flatten the North Underworld palace. This god has already destroyed the Saint Devil City. Now, it's time for you to be executed. Then, the Luo Shui clone waved her palms and sent out a blue light that blotted out the sky toward Great Demon Saint and Third Demon Saint. Whoosh! The blue light that blotted out the sky immediately condensed into 2 hurricanes that were hundreds of miles tall and enveloped the 2 demon saints. Extreme Ice World Annihilation. The enormous icy blue hurricanes spun at an extreme speed and tried to strangle the 2 demon saints. The entire wasteland below the holy mountain was enveloped by extreme ice as if it had been sealed in ice. Originally, there were still tens of thousands of demon race experts who had survived. However, they were sealed by the extreme ice and frost, and their bodies were stiff and couldn't move. The demon race experts who were closer to the two demon saints were all enveloped by the icy hurricanes. In the blink of an eye, thousands of demon race experts were ground to dust by the hurricanes. Even Great Demon Saint and Third Demon Saint couldn't escape from the extreme ice hurricanes in a short period of time. The two could only use all their strength to cast spells to resist and dispel the hurricanes. Demon Dragon Protection. Great Sky Demon Protection. Sky-splitting Demon Blade, open for me. The two great devil saints roared furiously as they continued to fight in the ice tornado. A full quarter of an hour passed. Great Demon Saint and Third Demon Saint used all their strength and used a few Demon Dao treasures to defeat the two hurricanes and escape. The icy blue hurricanes that were hundreds of miles tall shattered into ice shards and scattered on the wasteland. Of course, the two demon saints also paid a heavy price. Both of them were covered in wounds and blood, and they looked quite miserable. Luo Shui didn't give them a chance to catch their breath and immediately summoned the Star Divine Fire from outer space to shoot down a dozen meteors. Star Fall Annihilation. More than a dozen huge meteors fell from the sky with dazzling silver flames. Suddenly, the pitch-black demon fog that covered the sky was dispersed by the Star Divine Fire. 1,000 miles around the holy mountain was illuminated by the silver starlight. Chapter 2051. Ordinary martial artists did not even have the right to go to the outer space. No matter how vast the starry sky was, they could only look at it from afar. As for the shooting stars, they were like the wrath of the gods to martial artists below the god realm. Even the great demon Saint Ling Xian and the third demon Saint Ta Tua did not dare to go against them. However, at this critical juncture, the two of them joined forces without hesitation and displayed a powerful defensive secret skill. Demon Sky Sacred Umbrella. The two of them faced each other with their palms pressed against each other. Blood-red light surged out of their bodies and an earth-shattering aura erupted. The demonic chi that was drifting in the heavens and earth from all directions gathered together like a flood. In the blink of an eye, a huge demonic chi shield was formed. The dark red light infused into the black shield and increased the power of the shield by a few times, reaching the limit of the martial sage realm. This half-black, half-red barrier not only protected the two demon sages, but also the tens of thousands of surviving demon race elites. In the next moment, dozens of shooting stars that were as dazzling as the sun descended from the sky. Boom! 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 A series of muffled explosions resounded through the sky and shook the earth. Suddenly, the silver star divine fire exploded and flooded the entire wasteland like a torrential flood. The area within a 300-mile radius became chaotic and chaotic. The terrifying star divine flame burned the ground into red lava, which flowed freely. Even the holy mountain at the end of the wilderness was affected. Below the mountainside, there were countless ravines and countless rocks collapsed. The godly mountain shook intensely, flashing with a dark red blood-red light and letting out muffled rumbling noises. The heavens and earth were in complete chaos. The protective shield formed by the two great demon saints lasted for 3 breaths of time, blocking the bombardment of the 9 meteors. However, when the 10th shooting star came down, the umbrella-like shield could no longer hold on. With a loud cracking sound, the entire shield fell apart and broke into pieces. When the 11th shooting star came down, the third demon Saint Ta Tua was hit and fell to the ground with a scream. When the 12th shooting star came down, the great demon Saint Ling Xian was also hit and fell to the ground from the sky. A huge crater was smashed into the ground, and the soil and sand were burned into magma, bursting with monstrous flames. The 13th meteor came crashing down, blasting thousands of demon race elites into smithereens. Even though the falling meteors had come to an end, the disaster was finally over. However, the torrential sea of flame and raging lava were still wreaking havoc in the wasteland. Only a few thousand demon elites remained, fleeing for their lives towards the sacred mountain. However, how could they escape? The star divine fire and blazing lava attacked, immediately drowning everyone. Regardless of whether it was his physical body or his divine soul, both were turned into ashes in the sea of fire, completely annihilated. What an apocalyptic scene! The wasteland within a radius of 300 miles had completely turned into a dark red sea of lava, with flames rising fiercely. Apart from Ling Xian and Ba Tuo who were lucky enough to survive, everyone else perished in the sea of fire, killed by the meteors. Of course, Ling Xian and Ba Tuo had also suffered serious injuries. When the two of them crawled out of the sea of lava, their bodies were already charred like charcoal, covered in pitch-black blood, and they looked extremely wretched. Not only were their physical bodies severely injured, their divine souls were also severely injured, and their strength had decreased by as much as 30%. What a vicious method! Ling Xian stood in the sky, looking down at the sea of lava and fire below, his eyes bulging with anger, almost bursting with blood. Luo Shui. You lowly slave, North Underworld Mountain will not live under the same sky as you. Ba Tuo looked at this scene in a daze, his eyes wide open, filled with fear and disbelief. He could not help but shake his head, murmuring in a low voice, "This is the method of a martial god expert. With a flick of his finger, he can destroy the world." Ba Tuo had never seen a martial god expert attack in his life, so he did not know the powerful methods of a martial god. The strongest person he had ever seen was the great demon Saint Ling Xian. Of course, there was also the ancestor fiend god. Thinking of this, Ba Tuo suddenly came to his senses and hurriedly transmitted his voice, "Great demon saint. This lowly woman has already gone crazy, and we can't stop her. The only thing we can do now is to ask the ancestor to come out of seclusion to kill her." As soon as Ba Tuo finished speaking, Ling Xian flatly refused and shouted angrily, "No. Absolutely not. The ancestor is in seclusion in the Blood Sea Abyss, comprehending the ancient demonic arts, and is about to break through. If we disturb him at this time, he will definitely fail and all his previous efforts will be for naught." Ba Tuo understood this and said worriedly, "But, if we don't ask the ancestor to come out of seclusion, how should we deal with it?" Ling Xian frowned and thought for a moment. His eyes flashed with determination, and he said firmly, "The only thing we can do now is to use the forbidden secret technique to forcefully increase our strength. Also, we can't hide those magic treasures anymore. We must do everything we can to keep this crazy woman busy and not let her destroy North Underworld Palace." Ba Tuo understood his meaning. After a moment of silence, he gritted his teeth and nodded, "All right. We'll do as you say." As soon as he finished speaking, Ba Tuo raised his palms and looked up at the sky, making a gesture of worship. His face was solemn, and blood flames surged out of his body. He shouted in a deep voice, "With my Dharma body, burning blood spirit. Heavenly demon blessing, Azura body." Ba Tuo chanted a long ancient demonic incantation and used all his strength to perform the forbidden secret technique. His blood essence and spiritual power seemed to be boiling, burning with blood-red flames that shot up into the sky. Although this would damage his demonic arts foundation and cause him to lose at least 100 years of cultivation, the technique could only be maintained for 15 minutes. After that, his blood essence would dry up and he would be extremely weak. He would have to recuperate for a few years to recover his strength. However, after performing the burning blood spirit, his combat strength increased by more than 6 times, reaching the limit of the martial sage realm. On the other side, the great demon sage Ling Xian also performed the burning blood spirit. Blood flames surged out of his body and shot up into the sky. His body expanded to 100 feet tall and turned into a huge demon. After burning his blood essence and demonic powers, his strength increased by 6 times. In a short period of time, he had surpassed the martial sage realm and was comparable to an early-stage martial god. Moreover, Ling Xian was a descendant of the ancient Shadow tribe and had a special gift. His huge demonic body was like a blurry shadow, appearing and disappearing. It was very unreal. Obviously, not only did he use the burning blood spirit, he also used the Shadow tribe's gift. Shadow escape. Ling Xian shouted angrily and his body suddenly disappeared into the sky, hiding in the darkness. In the next moment, he suddenly rushed out of the shadows and appeared behind Luo Shui's clone. Dragon-slaying claw. Ling Xian suddenly stretched out his huge claws and grabbed at Luo Shui's clone with a power that could tear everything apart. Luo Shui was already prepared. He immediately turned around and raised his fists to attack. Boom! You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.